The dawn wind rolled across the frost-gilded grasslands in slow, desolate waves, stirring ancient heather and thin stalks of pale ghost flower that had clawed their way through the ruins of the Giftlands. Those fields had known the weight of armies and the scream of dead men only a moon's turn ago. Yet already the pale sun stretched tentative fingers above the ragged horizon, promising that life, slow, stubborn life, might rise again where death had briefly ruled. Far to the south, the jagged spine of Winterfell's ramparts still cut the sky, but their once fierce silhouette had softened to a wounded hush. Broken towers bandaged with fresh-hewn timbers, and wisps of cooking smoke. Closer, though still distant enough to seem a memory, Castle Black crouched upon its perch beside the severed wall. It was here, in the uneasy hush between surviving and rebuilding, that Jon Snow rode alone. His destrier Ghostwind, the gift of a free folk tanner whose name Jon could scarcely recall, snorted steam with each breath, hooves crunching ice-crusted ruts. The stallion's flanks quivered under a mottled gray and white hide, a living echo of the direwolf that paced an invisible circle not far ahead. Ghost, that silent guardian of half-remembered nights, drifted through skeletal pines like moonlight given flesh. Though Jon watched the wolf's outline with the peripheral wariness that battle had burned into him, his thoughts remained iron-snared on the letter folded in a waxed leather pouch at his breast. Arya's hand had penned it, sharp, impatient strokes that tugged his heart to a fragile smile despite the solemn ink. "I will meet you where the new-grown weirwoods gather at the foot of the wall," she had written. "And if you are late, I will carve your name on every stump so you may not forget the path." A threat born of affection, delivered like a sparring blow. 2 weeks had slipped beneath Jon's boots since the Raven found him, and still each league north felt both lighter and heavier than the last. Lighter, because every mile carried him away from council chambers thick with titles he no longer wore. Lord Commander, King in the North, Betrayer, Savior. He had shed them one by one like blood-soaked cloaks, until only the simplest name remained. A quiet snowflake drifting beyond the yawning severance in the wall where the dead once marched. Heavier, because with each hoofbeat a fresh uncertainty pressed upon his shoulders. What would he see when Arya stepped from between the pine trunks? Did she still grin like a wolf discovering new scents? Or had the weight of her voyages, beyond maps, beyond the edge of stories, pressed her into someone half-obscured? Would she recognize him, now that he had buried half a dozen futures in the hard northern soil? The question tangled around his ribs until Ghostwind balked, sensing a tension his rider would not voice. Jon eased the reins, drawing a slow breath that smelled of cold sap and distant peat smoke. All around, the early sun brushed the frost to fleeting embers. Somewhere an owl, fooled by the brightness, uttered a bewildered hoot and fell silent. The world waited, as though the land itself held breath for another reunion. He found the new-grown weirwoods before noon. They were only saplings yet, spindly trunks no thicker than a child's wrist, hewn from cuttings blessed by the last surviving children of the forest. Their leaves were winter-brown still, no living face carved upon their bark, but each slender limb trembled with pale promise, a hush that whispered that old gods could be young again. Jon dismounted and let the stallion graze upon frost-glass grass, while Ghost padded among the saplings, nose twitching its sense beyond mortal ken. She emerged without warning, as though the world had only now chosen to reveal her. One moment the clearing lay empty save for fragile weirwoods, the next Arya stood between two trunks, bedraggled cloak fluttering, cheeks brimmed with windburn and the amused mischief of childhood half-remembered. Her hair, once ash-brown, now streaked sun-silver from sea voyages, hung loose around her jaw. She wore pale boiled leather that might have been stitched in lace, breeches of supple Myrish wool, and no sigil save the subtle direwolf medallion on the thong at her throat. Needle rode at her hip. She seemed both older and flame-bright young, like a dagger tempered twice over. "You're late," she said. The words struck him like a splash from the hot springs beneath Winterfell. Sharp, bracing, warming all at once. Jon tried, failed, not to smile. "I had to speak with the free folk elders at Hardhome. They still argue which goat trail belongs to which clan. An hour wasted there is mercy." That's 2 hours then, she teased, stepping closer. 1 for the goat trail, 1 for your indulgence in negotiation. He laughed, a low sound he had not made since the snows melted off the battlefield. In 2 strides they closed the gap, foreheads almost touching, the hush between them fragile as first ice. Words felt cumbersome. Instead, Jon lifted his gloved fingers and brushed a stray lock from Arya's brow. She did not flinch. Her eyes, gray as storm clouds striking moonlight, studied him with unsettling frankness. At length her lips parted, sculpting softer syllables. I'm glad it's you. 5 words that cracked the ice inside his chest. He murmured. And I'm glad it's you. They lingered there, like 2 wolves pressing muzzles, to prove neither was illusion. At last Arya exhaled, the tension in her shoulders easing. She looked over the saplings. Small now, she mused, brushing the tip of one pale leaf. But when they grow, the roots will take deep hold. That's what matters. Deep roots. Jon followed her gaze. They need watchers, he said softly. Not the night's watch of oaths and chains. Not anymore. Something freer. A brotherhood and sisterhood bound by choice, not sentence. Rangers, who serve both realms. Rangers, Arya repeated, tasting the word. A spark danced in her eyes. And sisters. Brothers. All folk free to choose. I like that. She unsheathed needle a finger's breadth, then slid it back. We'll need more than saplings to convince the North or beyond the wall. We will, Jon agreed. The enormity of it filled the clearing. The shattered kingdoms, the wary free folk, the southern lords squabbling over shipping lanes while still sniffing for whispers of dragons. Yet he felt no dread. The task was vast, but it was theirs. Ghost's low rumble broke the quiet. The direwolf stepped to Arya's side, nose nudging her knuckles, breath steaming. She laughed and scratched behind his ear. The sound was a shard of childhood snowball fights echoing through winters past. He remembers, he said, glancing at Jon. He never forgets Pack. Arya's face softened. Nor do I. They walked the perimeter of the clearing, mapping in silence where lodges might rise, where a training ring could be carved. Jon spoke of the wildling spearwives who had asked for purpose beyond hunting. Arya recalled the shipwrights of the Sunset Sea who owed her favors thick as barnacles. They sketched with words. Tall watch trees strung with gongs to mark drifting dead. Glass candle beacons for distant wanderers. Raven lofts deeper than any rookery old town ever boasted. The picture grew around them like a waking dream until the day's light bowed toward dusk. They made camp at the edge of the clearing, where an old fire circle still bore the bones of knights watch patrols long disbanded. Jon rebuilt the ring with fresh stones, while Arya gathered fallen pine limbs, made brittle by winter. When sparks leapt from flint and steel, she caught them in a wisp of shredded birch bark. The flame took greedily, as though delighted to belong to living hands again. Evening bled across the sky, painting clouds of bruised lavender, and the fire's glow cast tall dancing shadows behind the saplings, old gods cavorting in new skins. Over rabbit stew and stale oatcakes, they spoke in lower tones of what the world had become. Sansa's letters warned of fragile alliances sewn with silken threads, lords eager to gnaw at each other's reaches now that the great foe had fallen. Bran, Jon still fumbled for the title of king, for he could not believe a boy of quiet riddles and thousand-yard stares truly wished for thrones. Sent ravens etched with distant visions. He saw sails massing beyond stepstones, free companies reforming in Essos, and dragons, smaller than Daenerys' lost children yet growing each year upon smoking crags. Sam, now Grand Maester in truth, wrote of scrolls unearthed that spoke of bygone orders of wanderers who kept not castles, but roads, bridging realms and holding the wild at bay through knowledge and steel. The world shifts beneath us while we argue harvest tallies, he cautioned. If honor is to survive, it must learn to walk again. Jon read those words aloud, and Arya listened with head cocked, as if hearing the echo of something older than any of them. She tossed another branch on the fire, sending sparks swirling. Rangers, she repeated once more. We'll need a better name later. Names matter when you go to lords with coin. But for now, rangers will do. For now, John agreed. He stretched his sore legs toward the warmth. Tomorrow I ride to Mole's town. There are folk there who survived Winterfall. Free folk and black brothers alike. They might listen. Good, Arya said. She leaned back against a moss-capped stump. Half shadow, half flame. I'll head west to the woods along the lake. There's an archery clan of the Hornfoot, quick folk. I've matched arrows with them. They owe me a favor. John frowned. You shouldn't ride alone. She grinned without humor. Neither should you, yet here we are. Besides, alone is quieter. His protest wilted. He knew better than most the futility of trying to cage Arya Stark. 3 days, he said. Then return here, no matter what you find. 3. She agreed. She produced a tiny vial of green glass from her belt and poured 2 drops into the fire. The flames fizzed, roaring sudden blue. Unfamiliar perfume filled the air. Salt, lemon. Something tart as distant fruit. Bravosi oil. She explained. A promise to safe journeys. The scent stirred a faint memory of ships rocking in the harbor at Dragonstone, of wings overhead and tidal winds carrying the roar of a dying queen. John closed his eyes, letting the smell wash the old grief into calmer pools. When he opened them again, Arya watched him, gray gaze full of questions unspoken. He answered none, nor did she press. Night laid its black quilt across the clearing, broken only by the crackle of fire and Ghost's quiet prowl. The siblings spoke no more. Their breaths rose in twin plumes to join the stars. With dawn they would part again, but tonight, at last, they were pack. 2 pieces of a story not yet told. Far beyond the tree line, tucked beneath rocky escarpments where the shadows of giants still lingered, soft footsteps padded across new snow. Eyes reflected moonlight. 6 hungry pairs. They watched the flicker of man-fire whisper through the trunks. They smelled rabbit flesh and heard the murmur of human voices. In the lean times after war, hunger and boldness often walked hand in hand. John stirred long before first light. Ranger's habit, black as the still unmelted patches beside the ruins of the wall. He banked the fire to embers, strapped leathers, and hummed a half-forgotten verse from old Bear Mormont's halls. Arya woke at the sound, eyes opening sharp. She did not waste a breath in complaint, merely rolled to her feet, bound her cloak, and whistled for her pale mare tethered among the pines. In the quick gray hush of pre-dawn they shared a brief nod, a promise forged in bloodied snows. 3 days. Then he swung onto Ghostwind and rode south along the King's Road-turn track, while she slipped west between the trees, needle gleaming like the merest sliver of dawnlight. The silent watchers trailed them each a league, curious, hopeful, uncertain. Wolves hunted windward. Men rode with their backs exposed. Only after the riders had vanished did the eyes withdraw and the tracks fade, as though the forest itself erased all sign. But curious minds crave stories, and soon enough the watchers would whisper of 2 strangers who spoke of rangers and new orders. Whispers travel farther than ravens. John found Mole's town a scarred ghost of its former vice. The collapse of the Night's Watch had emptied the brothels. The war had broken the tunnels. The uneasy peace had lured farming hands south. What remained were half-charred huts, repurposed for trade with wildlings who found southern coin a novelty. Children scampered in mud puddles once thick with ale runoff. A makeshift market bustled around the old well, boasting carved bone trinkets, dried lichen cakes, and leathers dyed in improbable hues. He reined outside the lone structure bearing a signboard still intact, a wheel pierced by an arrow. Once a tavern, now a place where distant kin of black brothers gathered when they dared. Inside, the air smelled of pine tar and boiled cabbage. John's dark cloak drew eyes. Some wary, some hopeful, some bearing memories of commands obeyed beneath his banner. He lowered his hood. Someone cursed softly. Torment Giantsbane, every inch the broad red-bearded spectacle, rose from a bench near the hearth. "Snow," he bellowed, then beat a path through stools and scrawny dogs to clap John's shoulders. The slap nearly spilled his teeth. "Thought you'd gone to brood north of the empty world forever." John smiled despite the sting. "I still might. But first." You've some mad notion," Tormund finished, grinning. "I can see it flickering in those crow eyes." "Tell it then. And you'd best have ale for my ears." They sat. John spoke of the clearing, the saplings, the need for an order of rangers unshackled by outmoded vows. He spoke of breathing space between kingdoms. How men and women, wild-born and Kneeler-born, all must share watch now that legendary terrors had shown themselves mortal but not extinct. He spoke until his throat rasped, and Tormund listened, beard wagging in ponderous nods. Others drew closer. Former black brothers with nicks on their faces where frostbite once gnawed. Spearwives in wolf-skin shawls. Crooked smugglers who found it wise to drift north when King's Landing sniffed too close. When John fell silent, the room measured his words by the crackle of pine logs. Tormund reached for a tankard, drank, and slammed it down. "A new watch," he growled. "One folk choose, not chains." His eyes narrowed under shaggy brows. "You'd put Kneelers and free folk equal?" "Equal in duty," John answered. "Their oaths sworn to each other, not to crowns or castles. The land up here is wide enough for all, if someone keeps the roads safe." Murmurs rippled. A scar-cheeked harper, aunts of the Shadow Tower, shook his head. "And who'll feed them? Who pays for forges, nail, rope, grain? You can plant your dreams in the soil. Snow. But they'll die without coin." John inhaled the smoky air. "Each ranger's post will feed itself, barter with nearby villages. Trading rights in return for protection. Sansa and Bran will grant lands. The free folk elders have territory to spare if it keeps peace with their neighbors." A spearwife spat in the straw. "Kings talk, but talk blows away." John felt the weight of every doubt. He reached into his pouch and laid something on the table, a palm-sized disc of black iron ringed by runes. "The first blade forged for the Order," he said. "Damas steel folded at Wintertown's last smithy. I paid with what coin I have, but the next will be paid in service. Carry this to the forge master. Ask for 10 more blades, and tell him Jon Snow will guarantee the debt." Tormund lifted the disc, thumb shading runes that spoke of no one's language yet every tongue at once. Old gods etched by late-night chisels. He grunted admiration. "You mean it, then?" "I do." John met the eyes of each doubtful face. "We've all crawled through death. We know what comes when walls fall. I won't see it come again because men squabble over tolls at the Crossroads Inn." "Them?" The spearwife rolled a shoulder. "Perhaps. But folk south of the Neck won't fear stories of snarks and grumpkins now. They'll fear taxes and hunger more. Then we must be more than stories." John stood, cloak swirling. "Ride north with me. See the saplings, the training grounds not yet cut. If you believe after that. If not, walk away free." Silence bloomed. Slowly, Tormund's grin broke like sunrise. "I always fancied carving a new saga." "All right, Crow. I'll go and I'll bring a dozen strong spears. If your sister feeds us stewed goat, so much the better." "Then to see." Others exchanged glances. The spearwife spat again but nodded. A scar cheek turned the iron disc toward the hearthlight. Lips shaping silent prayers perhaps. Doubt lingered, but curiosity is a spark no warrior ignored. John felt the stirring of something fragile yet determined, the first breath of a sleeping god. That evening he shared bread with those who pledged to ride. They spoke of route, supply caches, timber near the shivering sea's edge. By lamplight John drafted a list. Axemen, thatchers, torchmakers, stable hands. He sealed it with a smear of wax and a stamp carved from weirwood scrap. A direwolf flanked by a wolf-headed arrow. No grand sigil, but a mark born of 2 Starks determined to rewrite the next tale. 3 days play out swift as sparrow flight, when tasks pile high. By dusk of the second day, John had secured 2 wagons of wool blankets and a crate of cast-iron cookpots. On dawn of the third he rode out with Tormund and his lot, the wagons trundling behind. A horn-foot outrider galloped forth to warn of snow squalls, but Ghostwind pressed on. Joan's mind, preoccupied with supply counts and rope tallies, drummed with a worry older than any ledger. Would Arya return? The clearing greeted him beneath slate-gray clouds bruised with unshed snow. 2 strangers already stood watch. A limber wildling lass with twin hatchets and a formerly cloistered squire wearing chain patched with boiled hides. Arya's work, doubtless. They hailed the caravan, guiding wagons onto newly trampled ground where the first outlines of tents marked a budding encampment. John dismounted, eyes sweeping for his sister. She sat astride a felled pine by the weirwood saplings, sharpening needle with casual precision. At her feet lay 3 hefty hares, gutted for supper. When John approached, she lifted her gaze, unsmiling yet alight. "Late," she chided. He snorted. "I bring wagons and giant's bane? I claim pardon." "Pardon granted," she replied, "but we'll tally your lateness in chores." She slid needle home. "You first. Dig a latrine trench." He barked a laugh. Some of the new recruits blinked. Laughter sounded rare amid their dogged tasks. Yet as dusk lowered, that laugh echoed again from different throats. Tormund guffawing at a squire's mishandled mallet, the hatchet lass mocking an ironborn who tried to pitch a tent as if he nailed sails. By midnight, a half-circle of canvas huts dotted the clearing. Fires winked under iron tripods, and the scent of hare stew overlapped with pine smoke. John and Arya walked the perimeter. Snowflakes drifted, the first of the season's late flurries. Each tent offered glimpses of folk. A night's watchboy teaching a spearwife to mend quilted gambesons. A muttering maester candidate brewing willow tea. 2 children, one wildling, one northern, tracing the runes on Joan's iron disc. Small things, but small things grow. At the far edge of the clearing, where the saplings gave way to older forest, Arya halted. John followed her stare. The shadows just beyond firelight held shapes. Half seen, retreating when noticed. Wolves or watchers? He lifted a hand to Ghost, who materialized near soundlessly and sniffed the air. The direwolf's hackles rose, but not in threat. He exhaled, a canine sigh, and settled onto his haunches, gaze fixed on the dark. "They're curious," Arya said. "I think they've followed me since the lake. They never crossed the line. Free folk scouts?" John guessed. She shook her head. "Not free folk." Her voice lowered. "Smaller footprints, quieter than any spearwife." John frowned at the dark beyond the clearing. Old tales of children of the forest stirred. "We'll leave offerings," he decided. "Bread, salt, and iron at the border. Let them see we mean no harm." Arya's smile was sly. "And if they steal the iron, we'll know they're bold." She clasped his arm. "One more thing. I met a sailor on the lake. She's Lyseni, captain of a river skipper. She says men in golden cloaks chase whispers that a black dragon's egg washed ashore at Maidenpool. Word travels quick." John's breath fogged. "Dragons will draw lords like flies, and mercenaries. And stories," Arya added. "If the world grows strange again, our rangers must be strangers still." He nodded, mind-mapping possibilities. "For now we build. We train. We prove the rangers to every passerby until they cannot imagine the north without us. Then twine. Slow and steady." She agreed. Deep roots. Snow thickened, flakes swirling like ghosts of feathers. The siblings stood beneath saplings that would one day wear faces. Around them the newborn order settled for the night, rough voices threading lullabies of many tongues. Somewhere in the dark, unseen eyes blinked and withdrew, leaving fresh tracks barely deeper than a child's. The wind shifted, and a single sapling leaf trembled. Whether from cold or from the fickle breath of old gods, newly curious none could say. Dawn arrived silver pale, and with it work. Trenches to dig, watch rotas to carve into elm boards, Quartermaster notes to tally who possessed spare arrows and who needed fletching lessons. John moved through tasks like a mason laying stone, each detail a brick in the wall of the future. At the training ring he corrected a recruit's stance with longsword. At the provisional armory he showed a wildling lad how to oil mail. Between duties he found Arya drilling 3 hornfoot archers in quick-shot volleys, her laughter sharp as arrow whistle each time they split the painted logs. By nightfall, a rhythm pulsed through the camp. Hammers thudding, saws singing, cooks ladling stew. It felt like the early days of Castle Black reborn, but freer. Men and women drank from the same pails. Children tended the ravens. No one barked orders from a dais. Instead, folk watched John and Arya, measuring their deeds. Each dawn they rose first. Each night they banked the last embers. Leadership by presence, not decree. On the 6th night after Jean's arrival, a small procession approached the clearing. 3 robed figures in dusk purple, their feet bare despite rime. At their head walked a woman with eyes impossibly ancient. Pools where dawns died and twilight lingered. John lowered his hand to his sword, but Arya's whisper stilled him. "Leaf?" she asked, half incredulous. The ancient woman tilted her head. "Another chooses the name now. I am Blossom, for this season." Her voice chimed like wind through cracked ice. She regarded the saplings. Children planted these from the last heart trees of the shattered Godswalker's Vale. Yet children wander, and men build fires. She looked to John. "Will your fires protect the green songs?" John bowed his head. "We mean to guard these lands, men, woods, and what remains of both." Blossom's gaze swept the camp, settling at last on Ghost, who watched with uncanny stillness. Wolves keep their oaths when men forget. She knelt, pressing her palm to the soil. The earth shimmered faintly, then let roots and bones entwine. "We will watch with you. But beware. Fires can warm, or they can burn. Keep your flames small, Snow Wolf." And she rose, robes whispering like leaves. The procession turned and slipped into the trees, gone between one heartbeat and the next. Only her words remained, echoing among tents and half-finished watchposts. That night John lay beneath a canvas sky, staring at stars. The camp dozed, save Arya who walked perimeter, and Ghost who padded sentinel circles. John felt the pulse of everything. Saplings drinking moonlight, hammers dreaming of dawn tasks, unseen roots entwining beneath his bedroll. A new order of rangers was a fragile thing. Yet life itself was fragile and still endured. He closed his eyes, and for a moment he was again that bastard boy at Winterfell, staring from ramparts, dreaming of places he might never see. Only now, those dreams had grown flesh, had stepped into the frost and breathed starlight. He did not know where the path bent beyond tomorrow. Roads to dragon eggs, to southern courts, to forgotten magics creeping from stone. But he knew this. He would walk those paths with Pack beside him, swords sharp, eyes open, and roots deep in living earth. The wind sighed, scattering ash among snowflakes. Somewhere a weirwood sapling's leaf unfurled, red as a newborn heart, as the old gods watched 2 young wolves begin their long vigil. Oh, dawn unfurled like a pale banner across the northern sky, washing the encampment in gray and rose light that picked out every detail of the newborn order. Frost glittered on guy ropes and fresh-cut shingles, on steel helm rims hung from tent poles to dry, on the single tilt hammer that rang slow, measured notes in the open-sided smithing shed. The camp had doubled since Joan's return. 20-odd souls were now nearly 60, their tents spreading past the saplings toward the slope that overlooked the old King's Road. Smoke already drifted from 3 cook fires, and the mingled scents of porridge, pine, and charcoal whispered of a place determined to live. John woke before the horn, as always. Ghost lifted a white head when his companion stirred, golden eyes reflecting sparks from the banked coals. For a moment, man and wolf held each other's gaze, breathing the same thin air until the boundary between thought and instinct thinned to a filament. Ready. The word needed no tongue. John rose, shrugged into a quilted jerkin, belted longclaw, and stepped into cold that nipped like playful teeth. The smith, a square-shouldered girl from White Harbor named Maidon, saluted with her hammer. "2 more spadroon blank, sir." She rarely used titles, but for him, she made exception. "Folded clean. I'll edge them by sundown." "Show the apprentices each pass," John reminded. "Blades last longer than smiths if they're taught properly." She grinned, soot making her teeth startling white. They'll grumble, but they'll watch." Joan's first circuit carried him past the fledgling Raven Loft, where a freckled ex-maester's acolyte sorted parchment scraps by size. Then to the archery range. Stakes driven in twin rows. Straw targets painted with concentric rings. Arya stood there already, hood flung back, braids whipping in the dawn breeze. 10 recruits formed a crooked line. 4 were Hornfoot, 2 Night's Watch, 1 Summer Islander with a courtly bow carved of red yew, and 3 fisher children barely taller than their own arrows. Arya stalked among them, correcting elbow angles with the flat of needle. When John paused at the edge, she angled him a glance, part welcome, part challenge, then returned to her lesson. String whispers. She told the line. "If your bow groans, it's telling everyone where you are. Listen." She drew, released. The arrow hissed almost without sound and thrummed snug into the central ring. "Now you." They obeyed. Half the shafts flew wide, but none loosed with more than a papery sigh. Improvement already. John moved on. His second circuit encompassed the perimeter trench, now wider and lined with stakes cut from young elm and the watch trees. The tallest pine bore a crow's nest lash platform where Rusk the Quiet, a former builder, perched with a spyglass. He signaled all clear. By the time the camp horn moaned low across the frost, warmth of purpose had banished night's chill. John helped ladle oat porridge into wooden bowls, nodded greetings, studied faces. Each carried its own tale. A gray-bearded iron-born shipwright wiping calloused hands on sealskin. A plump Sisterton seamstress threading linen into quilted gambesons. A lanky Dothraki groom who never spoke of how he came this far north, yet polished every horse's hooves with reverence. They did not match, yet they fit. Roots and branches, Arya liked to say. A tree stronger for its crooked limbs. After the meal came drill. John formed 4 squads on the packed earth square. Spear, sword, bow, and mixed. He walked the lines with Tormund, who delighted in bellowing encouragement that sounded like insults but left recruits grinning through their panting. Sweat steamed into the cold. Iron clashed. Arrows thudded. Progress measured in bruises and blisters and sudden sparks of competence that lit a recruit's eyes. Mid-morning a horn from the South Hill froze every hand. Rusk's clear voice floated down. "Riders on the King's Road, banner unknown." John signaled silent readiness. Spear squad shifted formation. Archers notched. Ghost padded to Yohn's side. Many recruits had never faced true combat. Better they felt the tension now. In daylight, under command. 5 riders trotted into view, cloaks snapping. Their horses wore braided manes threaded with silver bells. Their leader carried a staff tipped with a curved blade. Half spear, half scythe. Bellman, John guessed at first. But as they drew nearer, the bells chimed a pattern only riverfolk used to mark safe passage. When the riders halted at bow range, the leader swept off her hood. A weathered woman with skin deep umber and an ivory bead piercing her nose. She saluted with the scythe spear, palm up. "I am Captain Gianna, of the Pale Lantern." She called. "Is it Jon Snow who holds this ground?" John lowered his hood, stepped forward where she might see his face. "It is." "State your purpose." She swung from her saddle in a fluid motion, boots crunching frost. "Trade. And rumor. Word south says a new order keeps the passages between realms, asks coin from none, only service. My crew sails the Queen's course out of White Harbor. Winter winds favor us. If rumors meet,
Perhaps our blades may join yours a spell.
John's shoulders relaxed a fraction. You're welcome to parley. Lower your spear, come. Share broth. Jana gestured, and her riders dismounted. As they led mounts past the saplings, John noticed the seal on her saddle flap, an argent lantern encircled by waves. Not a house sigil but a ship's crest, known for fast courier runs. A good omen. He waved the all clear. Bows lowered, training resumed. In the command tent, little more than a stretched ox hide over pine spars, Gianna spread her charts. We run mail pouches for Lady Manderley. Last fortnight, a raven reached her from Gulltown. Sell sails in gold cloaks hiring north up the bight. They whisper of a dragon's egg somewhere near Maidenpool, yet also talk of other prizes. Wild timber rights, amber, slaves should law turn away. She fears they'll scout these lands soon. Men and her. John studied the map. Gold cloaks. City watch deserters? Some, Jana said. Some Licini. A spattering of Bravusi contract men. She pointed at coastal markers. Harbors iced, thin this season. They'll need inland staging grounds, old keeps, mining camps. If you patrol rivers, you can see them before they see you. Arya, perched on Joan's crate desk, tapped the chart south of the new gift. There's a ruin at Long Barrow Creek. Granary walls still stand. Perfect for forward supply. She looked to John. We should send a pair of scouts. Quiet ones. He knew that look. She was volunteering herself. He frowned. The perimeter still needs you here. Not half so much as a warning needs me there. She countered. 2 days out, 1 day watch, 2 days back. Ghosts can lead if sent strange. Jana sipped broth, amused. I'll lend 2 lantern men. They move like cats in reed marshes. Damn they. John weighed risks, then nodded once. Take them, but no heroics. Observe, return. Arya smiled anyway. The wolfish curl that told him heroics might happen regardless. Afternoon bled into golden haze. John marched newcomers along the north ridge to fell spruce for watchtowers. Axes rang. Sap bled amber lines. While his hands guided angle of cut, mine drifted to scales and wings. Dragons again in human talk. Did the world have room for both Skyfire and the small hopes he nurtured here? At dusk Blossom returned. She emerged from a root arch as though the earth breathed her forth. Children of the forest, seldom repeated paths. Yet tonight, she arrived alone, eyes shadowed by something like concern. John and Arya met her near the saplings, the entire camp instinctively quieter under her gaze. Many footfalls tremble the moss, Blossom said. Men chase glitter of legend, paying no mind to seed or stream. Their boots crush sleeping seeds that may yet feed a doe or a child. She touched a sapling trunk. Your roots grow, but danger steps louder. John inclined his head. We've heard of cell sales. We prepare. Then, prepare also for the unseen. Blossom's fingers brushed the air, weaving. The wind carries embers from Blackwater still. Those embers seek new kindling. Arya frowned. Targaryen embers. Fire remembers fire. Blossom answered, cryptic as ever. Yet she drew from her satchel a pouch of dully glowing dust. Birch blood and stone tears. Scatter this around your heart trees. It masks their song from greedy ears. She pressed the pouch into Joan's palm. But song cannot hide forever. You must learn to sing, louder, truer. Nenawairu. Before they could voice thanks, she stepped back and dissolved between 2 saplings, vanishing as water into loam. Only her scent, fresh rain, old leaves, lingered. Night came fast, carrying the season's first real snow. Thick flakes filled lantern light, blanketing tents, muffling sounds until even ghosts' footfalls left only whispers. John walked watch with Rusk, listening to canvas billow, ensuring lines held. In the smithy Maidan quenched new blades that hissed at the cold. Sparks danced on snow, tiny stars born and dead within a breath. Beneath a tarred awning, 3 recruits played fingerbones for dried cherries, their laughter subdued but genuine. Nearby, a spearwife sang a lullaby to the fisher children, words in old tongue braided with the lake folks' chant. The melody drifted like smoke across the camp, softening edges of hardship. John paused where the saplings huddled under snow. He scattered a pinch of blossom's dust in a careful circle. It glimmered, sank, and the night hush seemed to deepen as though the forest accepted the offering. He exhaled fog. Tomorrow would bring lists, rations, sentry shifts, forecast of storms blowing out of Skagos. But for now he let the silence tell him he was not alone. That roots intertwined beneath every boot, every hoof, every hope. 3 days later, Arya's scouting party slipped back through pre-dawn gloom. John found them at the perimeter gate, shadows within shadows until Ghost padded forward and whined low in recognition. Arya's cloak was crusted with river mud. Her eyes glittered with exhaustion and triumph. "No camp yet," she reported, voice a rasp. But they came ashore at Breakstone Cove. Not more than 25. Golden cloaks indeed, though mottled with foreign badges. They hired 2 mountain clansmen as guides, supplies only enough for a fast strike force. John handed her a steaming beaker of willow bark tea. Their target? They questioned shepherd folk about abandoned watch forts, likely Eastwatch ruins or Queen's Crown. But they spoke of eggs too. One man boasted of fortune that glows in flame. He felt a coldness despite the tea's heat. How long before they move inland? A day behind us, no more. Arya coughed river grit from her throat. They have scouting hounds. Good ones. He nodded. Rest 2 hours, then council. By sunup, the command tent brimmed. Tormund, Jana, Maedon, Rusk, the spearwife Gilha, and Sam's raven perched croaking atop a crate. John spread Arya's map, marking Breakstone Cove with a coal nub. 25 trained sellswords can cut a swath if we let them. He began. We cannot field equal numbers of veterans yet, but we know the ground. We can mislead, delay, divide. Them Suan. Maedon tapped the Eastwatch symbol. There's still rusted chain and collapsed towers. Lure them into the lower courtyard. Flood through sea tunnels with tide. Trap them. Tormund chuckled. Old drown rat tricks. I like it. But who fishes them? Arya answered. I will lead a 5-wolf cell. Myself, 2 hornfoot archers, Jaina swiftest runner, and Ghost. We shadow them, leave false prints to steer them along the bluff path. Meanwhile, John's squad rides ahead to prep the trap. John considered risk. Arya's confidence burned like forge coals, yet sellswords were not fools. Still, speed mattered. Delay could cost the saplings. He met her eyes, saw the steady storm there, and gave a tight nod. Done? Preparations spun the camp into organized storm. Archers fletched shafts with broad heads dipped in pine tar for signal shots. Maedon loaded sleds with chain lengths, pitons, and 2 casks of oil salvaged from a wrecked whaler. Tormund drilled spear squad in shield wall. Maneuvers suited to narrow causeways. Jana briefed her courier runners, voice swift but calm. Before departure, John gathered every soul around the central fire. Snow sifted on hoods and helm crests. He cleared his throat. You have chosen this order freely. Today we prove that choice. We stand for those who planted these saplings, for folk who will one day walk these roads without fear. Whatever comes, remember, we watch not for walls, but for each other. He drew the iron disc from his pouch. The runes caught fire glow. Our vow has yet to be carved, so carve it in deeds. Hold the path. He passed the disc to Rusk, who would guard the camp with the wounded and the children. Then John buckled on sword and helm and swung into Ghostwind's saddle. The march south unfurled under steel skies. Wind keened through fir boughs. Drifts swirled ankle-deep. Arya's cell peeled away at the fork, vanishing into the bowl-shadowed track like ghosts. John led 30 rangers onward, Tormund humming bawdy ballads to keep spirits high, spears bobbing, lantern bells clinking. Eastwatch ruins loomed by afternoon. Broken curtain wall gnawed by sea storms, tower stumps jutting like rotten teeth. Gatehouse collapsed upon itself. Cracked stone nonetheless offered defensive angles. John assigned squads. Maidon smiths to set anchor spikes along inner arch. Janna's sailors to rig chains across breach points. Archers to nest in upper rubble. Tormund supervised oil casks at the tide tunnel mouth, ready to heave them closed with winch and wedge. They worked until dusk painted the battered ramparts blood gold. Then they ate salt pork and dried apple, nursing silence as waves boomed hollow under ice rafts. Night brought a new chill, and with it a distant horn echo. Enemy scouts. John doused the fire, posted watches. Hours crawled. Ghost patrolled ramparts, a wraith among shattered merlons. In the second dog watch, archers noted torch glow weaving along the cliff track. 20 shapes, perhaps more. Arya's trail had done its work. Sellswords approached warily, blades out. Hounds snuffling. Their captain, a tall bravo in gilded brigandine, ordered 2 lantern-bearers forward to guide. Search the keep. Loot first, then look for the egg. John signaled. Maidon's crew loosened chain slack. Archers notched. Tormund's spears tensed behind the inner arch. Snow gusted, veiling moon. The enemy crossed the gate rubble, unaware of pitons glinting under drift. When half their number stood beneath the broken tower, Maidon yanked the release hook. Chain length snapped taut, toppling stone outcrop onto 3 swordsmen. The crash roared across the courtyard. Hounds yelped. Confusion bloomed. John's horn blared. Archers let fly. Shadow shafts whistling into torchlight, each bolt sowing panic. Sellswords scattered. Some rushing the breached sally, others charging inner arch where Tormund met them in a thunder of oak shields. John vaulted rubble, long claw, a silver arc. Ghost materialized beside him, jaws crimson. The melee was swift, yet vicious. A Lyseni axeman nearly cleaved Janna's knee, before Maidon felled him with a smith's hammer. Tar-soaked broadhead set abandoned torches ablaze. Flames danced off ice-slick stone. The Bravo captain rallied 5 men, forcing John toward a half-collapsed stair. But Ghost lunged, hauling one screaming into the dark. John parried, riposted, felt steel jar bone as Longclaw found neck. Blood hissed on snow. Below, tunnel team signaled rising tide. Arya's distant owl hoot answered from cliff rim. She had guided the remainder of enemy vanguard onto a dead-end shelf. Watching them flounder, she sent 2 fire arrows into oil scrap wood stacked earlier. Flames roared, trapping the sellswords between sea and blaze. By dawn it was done. 12 prisoners bound, 8 dead, 5 lost to tide. Rangers lost 2. 1 Summer Islander archer, 1 Hornfoot youth. Mourned quickly. Solemnly, their bodies wrapped in sailcloth for pyre gifting to the old gods and the new. Snow fell thick, muting colors, but hearts beat fierce under furs. Arya strode into courtyard, soot streaking cheek. Their captain's pouch, she said, tossing a wet oilskin bundle. Inside lay a parchment sealed with green wax bearing a 7-pointed star. Edict from King's Landing Tyrell Regency, authorizing retrieval of property. For the benefit of the realm. Not sell sales then. Sanctioned scavengers. John felt weary fury. So South Crowns reach north again with tempers sheathed in silk. Let them reach, Tormund growled. We'll slap their silk with snow. Yet politics cut deeper than blades. John knew Bran's crown strained to hold 7 wavering kingdoms. Tyrell stewards hungered to prove worth. If an egg truly existed, the Game of Thrones breathed anew. They returned to camp with prisoners in tow. Rusk raised the order banner, Direwolf with arrowhead. To welcome victors and honor fallen. Recruits cheered, though eyes shone with grief for the dead. John spoke gently over the beer pyres, committing names to memory, voices to wind. Arya laid an arrow across each cloth shroud. Maidon rang her anvil once for each soul. Blossom watched from the tree line. Silent and grave. Winter tightened its grip in the weeks that followed. Snowdrifts rose waist deep between tents, yet the order thrived. Maidon finished forging 20 ranger blades. Short, broad, double-edged for chopping, as well as thrust. Recruits took them with reverence, etching their own names beside the runes. Ownership through service, not birth. John drafted the first oath with Sam's guidance via Raven. I stand for those who walk free. I guard route and road. I keep watch with chosen kin. And while I breathe, the wild may bloom. Simple, free of crown fealty. The entire camp recited it at dawn beneath the snow-capped saplings. Right palms on sword hilts, or bow staves or carpenter's mallets. Left palms pressed to the earth. Arguments happened. Over rations, over watch shifts, over how loud Tormund's jokes could be after ninth bell. But conflicts ended in council circles, where each voice soared equally and decisions, etched into a cedar plaque. John found these circles exhausting yet vital. He did not rule, he guided. Arya thrived, darting between tasks, teaching silent movement in drifts, tracing secret woodland paths with children who followed her as ducklings follow a river otter. Letters arrived. Sansa wrote of lords muttering at this ragged assembly north of broken walls, yet she defended them in council, citing trade benefits, fewer raids. Bran's raven spoke of strange tremors far beyond the shivering sea, fires that flickered on horizon waters, shapes neither ship nor leviathan. Sam sent treatises on dragon morphology. If an egg were real, heat of many forges might rouse it. But song, true Valyrian verse, was the keystone. One blizzard-lashed night John pored over Sam's parchments by seal-fat lamp, while Ghost snored near embers. The tent flap rustled, revealing Blossom. She wordlessly held out a shard of glistening obsidian shaped like a petal. Heart of fire within heart of stone. She murmured. Should men wake the winged flame, give it roots, or it will burn the sky barren. John traced the shard's razor edge. I cannot stop them all, but you can choose where you stand when storms gather. Her eyes gleamed green within green. Teach the fire to sing with the wood. Snow Wolf. Else dawn will weep blood on frost. With those words she left, snow flurries swallowing her shape. Sleep came only at dawn's first gray, carrying dreams of dragons coiling about weirwood trunks, their scales turning bark to ember. Spring, when it finally cracked winter's hold, arrived in fits. Sunbursts followed by sleet, aphid clouds chased by sleety squalls. Yet meltwater carved channels through camp, and tiny blue crocus speared snowcrust. The saplings gained hand's width in a moon's turn. The first appeared to sprout crimson buds, faces waiting to blossom. Prisoners from Eastwatch offered choice of labor or release. Largely chose labor. Among them, a former city watch sergeant named Darren proved adept at drilling foot formations. John granted him provisional stripes. Suspicion lingered but faded as Darren took blows meant for green lads and never shirked latrine duty. The order's reputation spread on traitor tongues. When Gianna returned from White Harbor, she carried sacks of barley seed. She also brought rumor that Taroshi war galleys had anchored off Duskendale, flying mercenary colors, offering bounties for arcane curiosities. Arya called a moot on the ridge. There, under open sun, she proposed a network of signal pyres strung from Queen's Crown to Last Hearth. Smoke codes by day, flame shapes by night. The assembly approved. Work details fanned out with axes and shale mortar, while a scribe from Old Town devised the codebook. Triangles for raiders, spirals for wildfire, crescents for dragons. At the same moot, John announced they would send envoys south. 2 teams bearing letters of intent to lordships along the neck, and to King's Landing itself. We hide nothing, he told them. Let them see our oath, our faces, hear our reasons. If they brand us rebels, let them do so with truth in hand. Volunteers stepped forward. The first envoy, led by Darren and the Summer Islander Bowyer Iska, departed in fresh attire bearing the new sigil, a direwolf's head within a compass rose. Days bled to weeks. The order's first foal was born, a gangly colt named Candleflame for his pale mane. The children's dormitory gained straw pallets and a makeshift library of 8 books, stories Sam sent, plus logbooks from Giana's ship. The Ranger's hymn took shape, lyrics hammered out beside the forge, melody stolen from a Dornish marching tune, and slowed to a contemplative hum. One twilight, Arya beckoned Jon to the archery range. There, 3 children of the forest waited, boughs of weirwood strung with spider gut. The tallest, if any could be called tall, introduced herself as Flicker. "We would learn your iron song," she said, nodding at the practice targets. "And teach you ours." Their arrows flew in silence, splitting Jon's target clean despite wind. In exchange, Arya showed them her spinning backshot. Laughter, low, musical, filled the air like chimes made of water droplets. An alliance of string and stave, forged without treaties. Summer's first warm night, Jon sat atop the watchpine, breathing resin and starshine. The camp below shimmered with fireflies and lanterns. He saw Maidan stoking forge embers, Tormund wrestling 3 recruits near the mess pit, Arya slipping between tents, correcting a sentry's loose bowstring. He saw children chasing Ghost, who pretended slowness, letting them tag his tail. He saw the saplings, no longer frail, nearly shoulder-high, leaves crimson and cream, swaying as if to some ancient lullaby. And he felt it, root and road, blood and oath, threading him to each living thing in that clearing. 5 hours could pass, 5 years, 5 winters, but this seedling of a dream would keep growing so long as they chose to watch. Down the valley the signal pyre flared, a single upright flame, no code shape. A routine test from Queenscrown perhaps, but Jon still raised the spyglass. Flames licked into spiral. Spiral, wildfire sighted. His pulse kicked. He clambered down, sounding the horn before feet hit soil. Rangers spilled from tents, buckling gear. Arya reached him in 3 bounds, knot of braids swinging. "South," he tossed her the glass. "Duskendale's mercenaries. If they carry the egg, they journey by river from Maidenpool. Our envoys ride those woods. Nander." Arya's gaze hardened. "Then we ride faster." She was already strapping needles scabbard across her back in courier fashion. Maidan called for horses. Tormund barked names. Nerves fluttered through the ranks. Not fear, exhilaration tempered by training. Jon felt it echo in his veins. Here was the test beyond skirmish, beyond defense of stone. Here was the task Blossom foresaw. Teach fire to sing with wood or see dawn drowned in ash. He mounted Ghost Wind, Arya beside him on her gray mare Windshadow. Torches flicked along the newly built corral fence, casting wild stripes across their faces. Recruits formed column of 2s, leather creaking, breaths frosting. Jon raised his sword, point to stars. "Rangers, we keep watch, road or river, forest or field. We hold the path. Ride." Hooves thundered, earth shook. Saplings trembled, yet stood tall. In their branches leaves whispered promises to the night. That wolves had stirred, that roots had sunk deep, that dawn would come bright on oaths kept in silence and in flame. And high above, unseen shapes wheeled across the moon. No bigger than sparrows at that distance, but wings nonetheless, gliding on thermals toward lands where men and children of forest and newborn rangers would soon decide whether sky fire and green life could share one song, or clash until only embers and ice remained. Oh. Wah. Windshadow's hooves beat a low thunder through loam. Still damp from spring rains, each stride flinging up sprays of black earth that glittered momentarily in the moonlight before falling away behind Arya like droplets of quicksilver. She crouched low over the mare's neck, letting the animal choose its own line through the forest shadow. Her own senses stretched outward in a prickling lattice. Every distant owl hoot, every flutter of leaves overhanging the trail, every rhythmic pulse of Ghost Wind's hoofbeats, where John rode at the column's head. 90 heartbeats back, Tormund and the heavy squad rode, chain hauberks muting sword clink with sheepwool wraps. Behind them, a half-score of Hornfoot runners loped barefoot through the night, never losing pace with mounted comrades. It had been years since Arya's bare feet last bled from the King's Road's broken stone, yet the memory flickered now, oddly warm. Distance was a thing of the mind. Where a horse or a runner went, the land simply opened. The raw urgency of the signal spiral had animated the camp in fewer heartbeats than a startled hare needs to vanish. But hours later the deeper, slower thinking set in. Dawn would not wait for them, and the mercenary column, if indeed it bore live wildfire, could unleash havoc unmatched since King Aerys's last pyres. Worse still, if the dragon's egg rumor proved true, wildfire was likely only a shield for the greater prize. Arya's throat tightened at that. Dragon eggs were no trinkets. Daenerys hatchlings had rewritten a continent's fate. The new order of rangers had survived skirmish, blizzard, and the skepticism of winter scars. Yet a single living worm could devour all of it in smoke. Jon's voice cut the night like a steady blade. "Ridge?" His raised gauntlet signaled an incline steep enough to dismount. Hooves slid to a halt beside a mossy rise. They advanced on foot, reins looped to silent branches. At the crest, Arya pressed cheek to peat. Ghost's white bulk stretched low at her flank, every sense awake. She could taste distant smoke on the wind, pitch and salt mingled. Ship tar. Jon angled his spyglass. One by one the other officers crawled beside them. Janna flattening her braided hair beneath a hood, Maedon's big shoulders quivering against the strain of stillness, Darren the ex-watch sergeant palming the lens in turn. Each returned the glass with the same grim nod. Below, in a forest glade, not half a mile distant, 30-odd torches spotted the night like the slow swerve of fiery beetles. Between them long wagon shadows rolled, two abreast. Wagons blanketed in dun canvas, iron hoops glinting. The mercenaries made no attempt at stealth. Instead, they trusted speed, and the king's sealed writ that fluttered on the captain's belt. Worse, Arya saw the flicker of green, an oily ripple licking up one torch shaft. Wildfire stored poorly. Their arrogance alone kept the wagons unbarreled. Jon's hand closed around her wrist, a silent question. "Now?" She answered with a fractional tilt of the head. "Not yet. The land here was too open. Surprise must be total at a choke." 2 ridges farther, the trail pinched between a limestone spur and the dead trunks of a burnt stand left from the long night war. There, the wagons would slow. Their axes could shatter wheels, arrows dropped drivers before they reached for flint. Back through the ranks the order dispersed. Hornfoot archers sliding ahead through bracken. Maedon's smith gang hefting coils of iron chain that would snare horses' fetlocks. Tormund kept the heavy squad tight, muttering jokes about cooking green stew. Arya met his grin. Despite everything, she trusted the Giantsbane's ferocity. Even wildfire feared a man who never feared flame. The pinch point blurred nearer, under cloud-shrouded moon. Arya's squad spread among the dead birches, black limbs clawing at sky. She crouched behind a stump, counting breath, counting hooves. 12 mounted outriders, 6-foot crossbows, 2 wagons each drawn by 4 drays. At least 1 cage wagon farther back. That would be the egg if it existed. Safer in iron lattice than in packed straw wall. She felt the rhythm of the enemy column align with her heartbeat. Thud creak, thud creak. A whip crack echoed. Drivers coaxing beasts up the slope. Now. Needle's point traced a quick arc, the silent cut signaling release. Hornfoot arrows loosed, dark blurs biting torchbearers first. Flaming brands tumbled in arcs of ember snow. Darkness rushed in. Horses squealed, blinded. Chains snapped upward as Maedon's crew heaved from either tree line, entangling foremost drays. Wagons lurched, canvas sliding half aside to reveal round bronze pots sloshing a pale luminescence. 2 shattered on impact, but the wildfire only pooled, sputtering, still inert until touched by flame. Arya loosed from her shortbow. arrow snapping a mercenary's neck. Chaos blossomed. Joan's main body crashed down the spur, shields ringing. Longclaw shimmered in dim starlight, carving space. Wildfire pots spilled glowing veins into wagon beds. A crossbow quarrel whickered past Arya's ear. She rolled beneath the wagon belly, punched upward with needle into a calf. The scream above drowned by battle roar. Smoke poured from overturned torch stump as someone's clumsy boot reignited pitch, but Gianna's riverfolk shouted warning, flinging damp canvas to smother spark. In under 2 minutes, the column lay crippled. 15 Sellswords dead or incapacitated, 9 pinned beneath Maidan's hammer-butt dut. The rest dropped weapons, hands high. Torment, hair blazing in torch glow, yanked the captain forward. Gilded brigandine glimmered beneath grime. "Where's the egg?" he thundered. The captain spat blood. "Gone ahead, by river skiff." "You fight empty smoke." Arya's stomach lurched. Joan's eyes flashed to her, reading the same dread. If a skiff bore the egg north along the shivering current, it could make coast before dawn, straight to any waiting ship. Janna stepped forward, scythe spear poised. "Name the cove." "Sisterton," the captain hissed, voice cracking. "For the Tyrell Regent's coffers. Fire and blood for a rose throne twino." John exhaled slow, the sound of snow slide. "Bind them," he ordered. "Maidan, deuce every podat. Bury anything cracked." "Janna, can your pale lantern beat that skiff to Sisterton?" "Ben?" She considered. "Winds northeast. If we ride hard to Ember Point where she's harbored, catch the last tide. Aye. But fighting at sea differs from wood ambush." Arya wiped soot from brow. "Then we fight in water and wood both. You take a ranger squad aboard. The rest march along coast to hem them." Plans layered swiftly. Yon captured crossbowmen would haul their own spilled pots to a quarry pit for freezing. Maidan's apprentices fashioned iron manacles for the rest. Darren's scouts would ghost south to warn commons of stray wildfire. Within the hour, John, Arya, Janna, and a lean skirmish team were galloping east, abandoning tired mounts at Hardstone Stable for fresh ones, the keeper owed to John from older free folk bargains. Dawn's rose feather broke the sky as they crested the dunes that ringed Ember Point. There, moored against weather-sharpened pilings, floated the pale lantern, sails reefed but ready. Boarding was a blur of lines cast, oars run out, canvas loose to salt wind. Arya felt the deck surge underfoot, a living plankton thrumming heartbeat through seasoned timber. She had sailed before, but never beneath such urgency. Tormund shouted farewells from the shore, raising his axe in salute. John gripped the rail beside her. Sea spray dappled his beard. The sun lit iron sparks in his hair. 5 hours, Janna estimated at the wheel. Skiff left Breakstone Inlet near midnight. If they run sail and oar, they hug coast to outpace swell. We'll cut across deep water, risk more storm, but gain half a league each hour. With luck, intercept off lonely light shoals. Arya scanned the waves, whitecaps tumbling like ghost horses, but nothing topped horizon yet. Still, her mind mapped the math. A single-mast skiff heavy with egg and crew would not dare full sail else capsize. Rowing burned muscle. The lantern's broad beam and storm-bone keel could surge through bigger chop. Dado. Hours unfolded in rattling cordage and cry of gulls. John moved forward to aft, checking lashings, easing novice stomachs. Arya practiced knots under a wiry deckhand named Crookshaw, her fingers remembering Bravosian hitches. At midday, a storm line bruised western sky. Lightning licked cloud gut. Thunder rolled. Janna kept the wheel firm, crew reefing to storm trim. Rain hammered, abrupt as quarrels. Canvas snapped, masts moaned. The lantern plunged into troughs that sent stomachs to throats. Yet Arya felt exhilaration, a dance on the edge of blade and wave. Her world had once been a narrow corridor of fear. Now even the sea's fury felt like invitation. Storm passed swift as arrival, lavender light swirling in wake. And there, prow off starboard quarter, rode the skiff. Tiny by comparison, hull low, sail patched. Figures scrambled at its rail as they sighted the lantern's silhouette. One raised a spyglass. Another began frantic rowing. But the distance shrank with every breath, foam streaking between hulls. Arya voiced silent, thanks to every water god she'd learned. Rulers fire at sea, the many-faced warm current beneath Bravos, the drowned god of Ironborn, who sometimes listened even to non-believers. She loosed her cloak, rolling shoulders. We can't risk boarding if they carry wildfire. Jon warned Janna. Then cripple them, she replied. Ramming speed. The lantern's oars dug deep. Hull groaning, Arya braced. Heart hammering odd harmony with deck drum. At 30 yards, crossbow bolts zipped from the skiff. Short range. Poor aim, Jaren. Lantern archers answered, broadheads punching sail, severing stays. The skiff slewed sideways, losing wind. Its helmsman shouted, faces pale green in reflection of something glowing within an aft crate. The egg. Hold! Jon cried as Janna lined the beak ram. Wood splintered on collision. Water roared up. The skiff spun. Mast toppled. Men flung like dolls. Immediately, wildfire pots strapped near hatch began to hiss as salted sea splashed them. Arya saw fate pivot in that instant. Green tongues about to leap, smoke to catch, egg to boil. She vaulted railing, body arrowing over churning gap. Dot. She hit the skiff's deck light as a gull, needle in hand. A sail rose with dagger. She parried, kicked him unconscious. Another crawled toward Flintbox. She dropped him with pommel strike. Jon landed beside her with a thud, and a curse as he yanked free sword. Together they unstrapped the glowing object. An egg bigger than Jon's helm, rippled black-red scales shot through with cherry-glow veins. Warm as forge heart. Lantern lines hissed overhead, securing the listing craft. Janna's mates doused any sparking oil with soaked tarps. 2 mercenaries still alive surrendered, trembling. Arya focused on egg. Its heat pulsed, time to her heartbeat. Or perhaps the other way around. She remembered Daenerys in rumor, unsinged by pyre flames, blood tied to dragon. Arya felt nothing burn, but a hum filled her bones. Jon set the egg in a padded crate, lifted from the lantern. It cannot stay north, he murmured. If kings learn we harbor living fire, the order becomes target of every realm. Nor can we hand it to Tyrell regents, Arya answered, voice low. Another war of dragons? No. We hide it, or return it to the forest where flames sleep. Janna climbed down, wiping sea spray from brow. Storm spent. We must decide before we make Sisterton. Harbor gossip travels faster than gulls. Jon met Arya's gaze. Memories flashed. Blossom's shard of obsidian. Her warning that fire must learn to sing with wood. Roots and wings. Perhaps both could live, but only in true accord, safeguarded by those who walked between. We take it to the saplings, he said, surprising them both. They're the old gods' judge. Blossom and her kin know songs older than Valyria. If they deem it to wake, they'll guide. If not, we craft cairn of ice and green seal to hold it quiet. Janna crossed arms, weighing risk. At last she nodded. Then the lantern returns to the gift, silent as moon water. My crew can spread rumor we lost you in storm. Egg lost to abyss. Gives us head start. Men trust in. They sailed all night. Lanterns shuddered. Course northwest across deeper currents. Arya kept watch beside the egg's crate in hold. She felt its heartbeat slow with evening cool. Its glow dimmed to ember flick. She imagined tiny wings folded within stony shell. Dreaming of skies never flown. Part of her yearned to see it break, watch flame-scaled hatchlings scream at dawn. But another part, deeper, older, recalled the charred bones outside King's Landing. The smell of roasted innocence. Power unbounded. By dawn, the lantern rounded the white-fanged cliffs, gull cries echoing. Jon scanned shore with spyglass. Smoke plumes curled by Queen's Crown. Signal pyres repeating news of wildfire prisoners secured. Good. They moored below Ranger's Landing, a crude dock built weeks earlier. Campfolk hurried down. Maidon limping on bruised knee, Rusk waving, children scampering. John disembarked, expression unreadable, until he knelt to clasp the smallest child's shoulder. Relief rippled through the gathering. Arya oversaw transfer of crate to a sled drawn by Candleflame the colt and his placid dam. Under armed escort, they ascended ridge into clearing. The weirwood saplings shivered though no wind blew. Blossom stood waiting, flanked by Flicker and another child of forest wearing cloak of raven feathers. Blossom's eyes fixed on the crate even before the leather cover lifted. Fire's child travels far, she whispered. It yearns for sky and blood, yet here roots hold firm. John explained capture, dangers, intent. Blossom's fingers traced runes on sled plank. Wood may cradle flame if heart remains cool. There is a cave beneath twin springs where ice water sings all year. Place it there. Not hidden, but held, so both flame and forest breathe. Then no. Tormund scratched beard. Ice cave dragon? Sounds like a tale to scare bairns. Tales keep memory, Blossom returned. Better memory than ashes. With chores assigned, John, Arya, Blossom, and a guard detachment set off to the Twin Springs 2 miles north. Path wound through cedar groves, thick with pollen. The cave mouth yawned between roots, frost mist curling outward even in midday warmth. Inside, crystal icicles clung to ceiling while rivulets danced in subterranean light from fissures above. They set the crate on a natural stone dais, ringed by shallow water. Blossom scattered a powder that smelled of cedar and distant storms. Chanting soft, the egg's glow steadied, then subsided to dull pulse barely seen. It sleeps, Blossom pronounced. While saplings grow tall, let this heart know lullaby of water and root. John placed his palm on shell, then the stone. We will watch. Arya found herself pressing her own palm beside his. She thought of Nymeria's pack far to the riverlands, of ghost wolves in children's bedtime stories, and of wings beating one day in harmony with leaf rustle, rather than engulfing flame. The cave hummed quiet ascent. Outside, life resumed, training clatter, forge song, children's laughter. Yet under it all the order gained heavier gravity. They now guarded seed of cataclysm and wonder both. Envoys returned with letters. Mixed support, suspicion, offers of coin, threats of legal seizure. King's Landing demanded audience. Lady Sansa requested proof wildfire was contained. Bran's raven spoke simply. The wheel cracks anew. Choose spokes wisely. Council stretched long into summer nights. Some rangers argued to destroy egg, others to bargain with crowns for legitimacy. John listened. Baystone, then spoke. The egg lives because none of us asked to end its life. It sleeps because we chose not to wake it. That is our choice, and our burden. No realm's parchment alters what we decided in the cave. But we will not hide. We will invite each crown to send one witness, sworn never to reveal the cave's path. So rumor becomes record. Then Dawa say. Gilha countered that witnesses leak secrets for gold. Arya suggested faceless men could silence leaks, half joking, half not. Tormund offered to carve tongues from anyone who whispered wrong. Laughter broke tension but not doubt. In the end, they adopted compromise. Blossom herself would lead any envoy through winding dream paths only greenseers could navigate. Witnesses blinded by leaf shadow until cave stood before them. None could retrace alone. They drafted leaf and ink pact, forbidding exploitation. Whether thrones would honor it remained to be seen. The first envoy to accept was Lady Alice Karstark, newly sworn to Bran but fiercely independent. She arrived with 2 sworn shields and a maester. Blossom guided them. They returned pale, reverent. Elise penned letter vouching. The dragon sleeps beneath watersong. The rangers hold vigil as trustworthy as Winterfell's own bones. Other envoys followed. A Tyrell cousin, Dornish emissary, even a raven-haired Lyseni magister representing Bravosian bankers. Each left changed, some hopeful, some afraid, all respectful. Meanwhile, the order expanded. New watch stations rose along western ridges, each anchored by an elder sapling gifted from Blossom's grove. Rangers rotated monthly, 3 days patrol, 3 days craft, 1 day council. Literacy lessons flourished. One child of forest taught glyph writing to human scribes, bridging tongues. Yet threats evolved. Ironborn pirates raided whale camps. Emboldened by rumors, King's attention lay inland. A cult of Arya lore sprang in Flint Cliffs, preaching that only flame could purge remnants of White Walker sorcery, and their red priests coveted the egg. South, the Tyrell Regent's court schemed to fast-track airship ballista plans, first sketched in Maegor's day. Word arrived of small dragons sighted near Valyria's western Smoke Isles, a portent of age reborn. Joan's hair silvered at temples from worry and incessant dawn watch, but his resolve hardened. He drafted alliances. Supply accords with Manderley ports, mutual defense with mountain clans, neutral heel pass for septa caravans. He turned recruits into instructors, instructors into captains, always rotating to mix backgrounds. He listened to Blossom's whispers on night's saplings thrummed with summer lightning. Teach not just steel but story, not just watch but wonder. For wonder roots hearts deeper than any oath. Arya found herself restless. She loved each path, each hidden perch on pine limb, yet part of her ached for distant roads, Bravosian canals, the White Knife's fog, even dusty alleys of King's Landing where young boys chase dream of knighthood. She told Jon as much one amber dusk. They stood on Watchpine's summit. Sun setting like a dying forge. Roots need branches, Jon said after long silence. And branches wander into sky. Go, if the wind calls you. We've rangers enough now. Your path may return. She felt tears prick, but refused them. Instead, she slugged his arm. You'll muck everything in council without me. He smiled softly. Probably. Then hurry back. She left 2 mornings later with a small pack. Needle, a blank-paged leather journal, coin purse, and a single weirwood leaf gifted by Blossom, said to guide dreams. Ghost followed her to tree line, nuzzled her hand, then trotted back to camp. She did not look over shoulder, partly to spare tears, partly because forward was the only direction she'd ever trusted. Her first destination was King's Landing, aboard a slow grain barge, disguised as deckhand. The capital glittered repainted gold, but still stank of tanneries. She slipped through markets, listening to rumor. Tyrell Regent under pressure, talk of legitimizing high garden dragons of old ballads, faith militant uneasy. Small folk whispering of a wolf order in the north protecting forests from fire kings. Some stories made rangers heroic, others monstrous, stealing babies to feed a cave dragon. Arya recorded each tale in journal. Stories shaped futures. In the Red Keep, she donned kitchen drudge garb, eavesdropped on council, master of ships urging seizure expedition, Grand Maester citing oath leaf pact, regent's cousin pushing for demonstration of power. Arya noted faces, alliances. She considered silently crossing each throat, easy corridor kills. But such deaths spawn martyrs. Instead she slipped scroll of caution onto Regent's pillow. Wake not fire that cannot be quelled, for roots run under every throne. Signed, a watcher in the leaves. She doubted it would stop ambitions, but fear sometimes redirected greed to slower avenues. Onward she drifted south to Dorne, across to Lys, Bravos, and the Stepstones, gathering shards of rumor. Small dragon clutch stolen by pirate prince. Obsidian mines reopening in Skagos. A sellsword company with ice-forged arrows. Everywhere, talk of cold memories and new flames colliding. She sparred in alley rings, traded lethal stances with silent sisters of Myr, taught one orphan girl the needle thrust, and left her with a coin bearing the compass direwolf. Season's wheel. In the gift, summer blended to early autumn. Saplings now soared twice Jon's height. First carved faces emerged, gentle, watchful, wrought by Blossom's kin and willing humans under moon rituals. The faces wept sap at dawn, a sign of blessing. Children of forest danced spider silk banners between trunks on equinox. Rangers lit lanterns carved from amber, sending warm glow across clearing. One starless night, the egg pulsed brighter in cave, heat misting icy air. John stood vigil alone. Blossom approached. Flame dreams. She whispered, "It calls for name." "We are not parents to dragons," John answered, but his voice carried awe. "Yet you will be guardians, whether it cracks or calcifies. A name matters." John thought of wolves, of snow swirling through broken wall, of songs Sam once read of last dragon of the north, silver white, scale eyes like moon. But the egg gleamed red-black. He spoke softly, "Ashen wing." Blossom traced glyph in frost, nodding. Egg pulse soothed, as though name delivered lullaby. John exhaled. Winter breezes returned crisp. Pot. Letters reached camp. King's Landing would dispatch official delegation, led by High Garden's own Maester of Artillery, to inspect the Watch's wildfire containment. John prepared, cleared paths, posted non-lethal traps to impress caution. He crafted speech. "The Order welcomes oversight, but denies ownership of any weapon. They stand for root, road, and remembrance." The delegation arrived under gold and rose banners. Alongside engineers marched knights in polished armor, and a red priest named Selira, whose eyes burned like coals. The red priest demanded private communion with egg. John refused. Blossom intervened, inviting only the maester and lead engineer. Rage simmered, but protocol prevailed. Later, around council fire, the red priest warned, "The Lord of Light will claim his due. Flame cannot be caged by moss and memory." John responded that flame chooses its hearth when hearth proves worthy, not when priest calls. Months stretched into first snows of new winter. Arya had not returned. John's worry gnawed. Yet, letters arrived via faceless couriers. Coded passages of her travels, hints of conspiracies, maps traced in lemon juice. She wrote of training guerrilla cells in Riverlands to oppose Red Priest cult, of meeting Nymeria pack near Shen, and how they escorted refugees through bandit forests. She sent small trinkets. A Bravosi coin hammered into compass direwolf. A feather from Stepstone storm petrel. A shard of black glass shaped like leaf. On a quiet dawn watch, John fingered these tokens and smiled. Arya was wind, always returning in swirl. Threats remained. One night, torches appeared beyond sapling line. Ironborn reavers seeking egg, led by thrall who'd served Euron Greyjoy. Battle flared, rangers repelled them but lost two more. Joan's heart ached yet steadied. Their oath bound them to cost. In spring's first thaw, Arya indeed returned. She approached on foot, through early mist clearing, cloak full of road dust, eyes alight. Ghost barreled into her, nearly knocking her over. John, following, drew up short, overcome. Her presence filled a gulf he hadn't known widening. She unshouldered pack heavy with scrolls. Dragons hatch in Valyrian ruin. She reported without greeting. Pirate prince claims 3. War for tide and sky may come. We must be ready, roots deep, yes, but also branches armed. John guided her to council, listening as she laid maps, reports, alliances of small folk, willing to fight for lands rather than crowns. Blossom watched, with ancient approval. The Order, once a sapling itself, had grown trunk and bough. Now birds came to roost, storms to test strength. They trained harder, forged more blades, stocked larders with Hardhome grain. Maedon perfected a new steel layered with weirwood charcoal, lighter yet stronger against flame. Rusk's watchtowers gained mirrored heliographs signaling far ranges. Children of Forest taught 6 rangers the green dream craft, guiding them to glimpse possible tides, not to change the future but to stand ready. One such dream shook John. Ashenwing hatched, not in cave, but skyborn above a burning navy. Its first shriek both triumph and sorrow. He woke drenched, heart pounding, yet resolved. If Dragon Day came, they would guide it, not fight. Summer neared again when that day approached. Deep within cave, shell cracks whispered. Blossom summoned John, Arya, Maedon. Tormund, Yana, and 3 Green Dream Rangers. Steam rose from egg surface. Pulsing glow brightened, rhythmic with cave water's drip. They formed circle. Jon spoke soft greeting. Arya laid her palm. Shell hot, but not searing. Blossom chanted in old tongue. A crack widened. Sudden hiss. A taloned claw emerged, dark as onyx veined red. Another crack. Whiptail flick. Shell halves parted, revealing hatchling crouched amid shards. Wings folded, eyes milky, scales slick crimson black. Heat rolled through cave. Frost on walls melted into rivulets, yet water at dais rim hissed to steam but held. Hatchling hissed back, head swiveling. It met Jon's eyes, deep gold pupils slitting. Jon felt contact like forged spark on snow. Fear, awe, sorrow. Hope, Arya whispered name. Ashenwing. The dragonlet unfurled wings, membranes like garnet-stained parchment. Flapped once, testing. Steam gust lifted leaf debris. But no flame burst. Its first breath smoked harmless. Jon offered gloved hand with river fish fillet prepared earlier. Hatchling sniffed, snapped delicately. Fed, it settled, curling tail around heat-cracked stone. Blossom exhaled. Flame hears wood's lullaby. She pressed the obsidian petal into Jon's palm. Keep heart true, Snow Wolf. When other fires rage, sing this note. Outside, camp bells rang. South lookout signaled sails on horizon. Pirate prince with dragons rumored. The world tilted again. Jon rose. Ashenwing crooned soft query. He met Arya's gaze, 2 wolves facing dawn of dragon age. Their order would be fulcrum between burning sky and rooted earth. Jon spoke to rangers assembled outside cave. A dawn comes bearing winged shadow. We are the line between ruin and renewal. Stand ready, bow blade, belief. Teach flame to fly with forest. Bane. Cheers answered, ragged, fearful, determined. From tower, heliograph flashed code north, west, east, roots hold, wings guide. Across ridges other stations echoed. In distant sky, specks of larger dragons circled approaching fleet. Scale glints like embers, but within the gift, beneath woven canopy of sapling leaves and watchtowers, a hatchling named Ashenwing took first trembling step into daylight, guided by 2 Starks, who had learned that the longest watch was not a wall of stone, but the patient weaving of many lives into one unbroken vigil. Oh. Ashenwing's trembling steps sent ripples across the shallow pool, ringing the days, each taloned footfall scattering silver droplets that hissed where they kissed the warm shell fragments. Jon kept his breathing slow, measured. One hand extended at thigh height, so the hatchling might sample his scent whenever it dared. The fledgling's head, large-eyed and wedge-shaped, wove back and forth the way ghosts did when tasting an unfamiliar wind. Behind Jon, Blossom and 3 children of the forest whispered a lulling susurrus, their voices blending with the faint fall of water from the cave's ceiling fissures. Steam drifted up, curled around torch stalks, then vanished into darkness. Arya shifted weight beside the dais, careful not to let boot leather squeak. In Needle's reflection, she glimpsed her own face limned red gold by dragonlight. But what truly caught her attention were the tawny motes swirling in Ashenwing's still opaque irises. She'd seen that hue before, melted amber in Bravosian glassworks. A quick flare in Nymeria's eyes when the direwolf scented prey. Instinct whispered pack. She wondered whether dragons recognized such things. Minutes passed. Not many. Perhaps 5, perhaps 20. Time bled differently around newly born miracles, before the hatchling's wings flexed with greater confidence. It half-hopped, half-glided from the shattered shell onto Jon's outstretched arm. Needle-fine claws pricked leather vambrace, yet Jon didn't flinch. A faint smile ghosted his mouth. Easy now, he murmured. The world's wider than this cave. We'll show you slowly, little flame. Ashenwing chuffed, sending a puff of sulfur-tinged breath across Jon's cheek. The smell was not unpleasant, more like warm hearthstone after a rain than the acrid stink of wildfire. Its tail, already nearly twice the length of its body, coiled about Joan's elbow. Blossom nodded, apparently satisfied. Bond accepted. Flame walks with root. Medicine. And with road, Arya amended. She remembered the old Bravosi proverb. A journey is the first teacher. Ashenwing would learn soon enough. They stayed until the fledgling's eyelids began to droop, thin, translucent membranes shimmering lilac when torchlight touched them. Only then did Blossom produce a shallow wooden cradle lined in moss, soaked with spring water. Ashenwing settled inside, wings tucked, producing a kitten-like trill before sleep claimed it. Outside, dusk painted the sky in bruised violets streaked with rose. John and Arya emerged flanked by Blossom's kin, the cradle borne between them. A hush rippled across the clearing. Rangers paused mid-stride. Hammer blows stilled, bows lowered. Even Tormund's booming laugh faded to silence. 60-odd pairs of eyes tracked the tiny shape curled in moss. Awe fluttered with fear. Every heart seemed suspended on a single held breath. John spoke first, voice steady but resonant enough to carry. Ashenwing chooses to live among us as student, not master. Our oath to guard road and route now extends to sky. We hold watch for all. Some heads bowed. Others remained upright, lips pressed in private prayers. No objections rose. Trust forged through 2 winters had tempered these people beyond shock. That night no horns sounded, no drills ran. Instead, the order gathered in concentric rings about the central fire. Blossom sang a green-sung saga, low and rhythmic, telling of the first dawn where children of earth lifted flame from cold stone and taught it a song of restraint. Janus riverfolk picked up a soft harmony of sea shanty. Maidon's hammers chimed gentle cadence like temple bells. Even rough-voiced Tormund hummed along, eyes shining in the glow. Arya lay awake until moon set, mind racing along possibilities. Aerial scouting, messages borne on Dragonwing faster than ravens, yet also the certainty that crowns would covet what they could not control. At last exhaustion snagged her, dragging her into tangled dreams of crimson wings fanning over snowy pines. Sunrise spilled across camp in scarlet blades, sharper than usual. Wind carried briny notes from the eastern sea, along with distant boom of surf, far heavier than fair weather allowed. John found Janna already at the Watchpine's summit. Spyglass trained southeast. Big storm chasing bigger sails, she said without turning. 3-masted war dramans, black hulls, silver ramheads. Pirate Prince rides in style. John's goot tightened. They'd expected him, but not so soon. How many dragons confirmed? 1 spotted at dawn patrol. Big juvenile. Twice the size of Ashenwing's egg, guessing 15 years old at least. A sick taste coated John's tongue. A 15-year worm could strafe a keep to rubble. Time? 2 days to landfall if wind shifts. 3 if the gale drives them east. Dendar or Stow. Then we prepare for siege and envoy both. Preparations unfolded, like the synchronized opening of steel petals. Rusk dispatched runner ravens to mountain clans and White Harbor. Maidon set forge crews to craft additional swivel harpoons, reinforced with braided weirwood. Janna selected her 6 steadiest archers to man the newly finished cliff ballista line. Tormund drilled shield wall variations adapted to resist dragon fear. He swore oaths that more than iron could break a dragon's swoop. A wall of wills beats a wall of stone any winter day. Arya, for her part, slipped between tasks like wind between reeds. She inoculated the youngest rangers against panic with small challenges, blindfolded tracking drills, river crossings at dusk, timed obstacle courses threading narrow trees. Every victory, however small, banked confidence like kindling in their chests. Yet all knew the difference between sparring and surviving dragonfire. Which was why, late that afternoon, John convened a closed council inside the map. Yurt, Blossom, Arya, Janna, Maidon, Tormund, Rusk, and 3 Green Dream apprentices, whose visions might scent time's wind. On the felt floor lay sketches Sam had once copied from Valyrian scrolls. Dragon bone structure, gullet fire and sac capacity, vulnerabilities at underwing joint, and eye socket. Jon traced a charcoal circle around the gift. We cannot match them in sky. Their wyrm is full grown. Our strength is terrain. He tapped points on map. The burned birch choke path, Eastwatch ruins, the cedar mazes. Prince's men must march inland to seize Ashenwing. Ships alone cannot navigate cliff inlets. We lure them through narrow valleys where wings cannot fully spread. Maedon rumbled assent. Wyrwood ash bolts tipped with scagabsite. Hard as dragon glass. Slices scale easier. Blossom interjected softly. Steel bites scale, yet true weakness lies in thirst. Fire within must feed. Offer stone-cold wind and wet. Flame falters. Storm barrels. Arya realized. We still have half the wildfire, inert under seawater skins. If we freeze those skins in willow tubs. Slung beneath pine canopy, Jon saw the picture form. Drop them as the dragon passes. Sudden burst of steam, stifling breath. Rusk's brow knitted. And pray none rupture too soon. We roast ourselves. No, Blossom corrected. Eyes deep. Green words can weave a binding hush. I and mine will inscribe each barrel. Flame sleeps until break-bone moment. Council lasted hours, shaping defense that relied on precision rather than brute force. When dismissed, every member left with task stitched to heart. On the eve of arrival, wind died. The sky assumed peculiar stillness, as though holding a breath. Ashenwing sensed foreboding. It paced the cradle, wings flickering small sparks. Jon carried it into the clearing at twilight so night air could soothe. Rangers formed discreet ring, giving space. The hatchlings keening quieted when Arya approached. Her palm extended. She'd shaved a thin strip of rabbit hide earlier, now offered it. Ashenwing seized, gnawed happily. Tomorrow you'll stay in cave, Arya whispered. Listen for root song. We'll handle the loud part. Its pupils adjusted, narrow slits softening. She wondered if it understood words or merely tone. Either sufficed. At moonrise, Blossom and the other greenseers completed last runes on valley alders. They used a sap mixture that shimmered faintly under starlight, patterns curving like vines, but edged in script, reminiscent of Valyrian glyphs. Jon supervised the hoisting of 20 chilled wildfire skins. Sea bladders encased in ice pouches, netted from woven reeds, high into tree crowns along the choke path. Counterweights of smooth stone ran through pulley clusters anchored in granite outcrops. A single knife cut from hidden ranger could send a bladder plummeting. That same night, Arya infiltrated the pirate camp at the dune lip east of Sisterton. Partially to scout numbers, nearly 300 reavers, 5 scorpions, and a dozen crates of Dragonlance quarrels, and partially because she needed to see their dragon with her own eyes. She found it tethered at makeshift log palisade, a sinuous beast of charcoal gray hide flecked with starry white spots, wingspan near 30 paces. 2 handlers brushed its neck with a salve that steamed. Even chained, the dragon radiated coiled violence. Arya slipped so close she could feel exhaled heat swirling through cracks in palisade. She studied movement. Left hind leg still bore fracture scars. Slow to pivot that side. Right eye filmed with early cataract. Wing membranes riddled with small tears near mid-rib. Wounds of hard life at sea. She filed facts away. Returning before dawn, she scrawled a quick anatomical diagram for Maedon. Weak joints marked with exes. If they could land even one bolt there. First daybreak flare of distant sails came just as frost was lifting from meadow webs. Jon ordered horns kept silent. They could not mend hearts rattled too soon. Instead, a single drummed cadence called the camp to positions. Children of forest melted into underbrush, their leaf-dye cloaks blending with every fern. Rangers' men trenched palisades dusty. Maedon's ballista crew waited on Cedar Ridge, harpoons loaded. By mid-morning dust columns curled beyond treeline. The pirate prince's vanguard mounted on shaggy stepstone ponies, banners stitched with silver kraken coiled about a crowned skull. Drummers beat for intimidation. Reavers howled. Bolts from hidden archers picked off 2 outriders before some realized valley flanks were alive. Panic rippled. Yet they pressed on, overconfident in dragon advantage. And there it came. Sky shadow sliding over canopy. A hush falling as every creature sensed predator. The charcoal beast plunged through clouds, wings hammering morning air. It shrieked. The sound tumbled stones, rattled ribs. Several young rangers faltered. John slammed sword hilt against shield, barking mantra. Roots hold. The phrase cascaded a long line. Steadied nerves. Dragon's first pass strafed valley mouth, where decoy watchfires burned. Flame jetted emerald orange, devouring tinder stacks, but nothing vital. On return swoop it banked to vantage yet lost altitude unexpectedly. Sudden rotor of swirling cold mist rising from valley floor. Blossom's runes singing? The reavers below didn't notice, but John knew plan worked. Barrels venting chilled vapor upstream into air currents. At choke narrows, Maidon's crew hauled chain trigger. Net of forged links snapped across path. Lead wagons smashed timbers. Horses tumbled. Army momentum staggered. Above, dragon circled again. Slower. Breath, stuttering. Its handler crew at rear ridge loosed signal flares desperate to recall it. Now came second phase. Hidden hornfoot archers severed counterweight knots. 5 ice wildfire bladders plunged, striking rock midst reaver ranks. Runic seals shattered. For breathless heartbeat nothing happened. Then explosive bloom of scalding steam. Not flame, engulfed area. Boiling fog blinded riders, quenched torches, soaked arrows. Armor screamed as sudden heat contracted metal. No inferno, just crippling shock. Dragon's lungs pulled that steam cloud on upward draft. It wheeled, coughed plumes of black smoke. Momentum faltering. Maidon's sighted ballista. Loose. Harpoon sword, trailing coil. A child of forest perched mid-trunk whispered to wind. Breeze nudged missile half-pace starboard, enough to drive point directly into weakened wing seam. Monster roared agony, spin stalling, clipping treetops as it fought to regain sky. Arya sprinted along ridge cat-quick. She'd prepared the line. Another harpoon thundered, striking hind joint. She leapt from boulder, grapple hooked onto trailing chain, and as beast thrashed, she scrambled up links until flung atop its back near base of neck. Wind howled, pitch heaved. She dug twin dragonglass knives into scale gaps, slid low to minimize buffeting. Below, John saw her silhouette vanish into cloud. Panic clawed, but he forced focus on ground fight. Reavers rallied, shrieking revenge. Torment's shield wall met them head-on. Iron rang, blood sprayed. Green's ears loosed thorn-tipped darts coated in sleep. Gadat. Chaos braided valley. In the sky, the dragon tried to ascend, but injured wing could not bear load. It spiraled lower toward Far Meadow, exactly where Blossom's Grove ringed second runic ambush. Arya felt hot spray of blood across face as joint muscles tore under stress. She risked standing, hooking belt loop around dorsal spike. Ahead, ridge rose. Could she steer slightly? She yanked one buried knife sideways like a rein. The dragon lurched, favoring left. Good. But its rider, pirate prince clad in scaled brigandine, surfaced from behind neck ridge, curses searing. He swung broad cutlass. Arya ducked, counter thrust carving a shallow slash along his thigh. He bellowed. In desperate gamble, he drove spurs into beast's flanks, pain driving dragon into steep dive straight at sapling grove. On ground, John glimpsed descending shadow. Pure instinct told him path. He sprinted uphill, vaulting fallen trunks, ghost-matching pace. He reached grove edge as dragon crashed among fledgling weirwoods. Young trees snapped, but runic lattice flared alive. Emerald firefly swirls that clung to scale, siphoning heat until steam hissed off plates. Dragon's fire sac convulsed, only smoke coughed out. Arya rolled clear, knives lost. The pirate prince was less lucky. Necklash threw him into trunk, spine crack audible. The dragon writhed, pinned under net of branches and glowing runes. John slowed, blade ready if necessary. But something in Beast's eyes, pain without malice, stayed killing blow. He instead called Blossom. She glided from shadows, chanting new verse. Bark mended where charred. Saplings bent but not broke, cradling dragon in living cage as lights dimmed to calming pulses. Monster's chest heaved. Then still. Not dead. Sleeping. Valley battle subsided within hour. Position lost. Reavers surrendered, or fled into foothills where allied clans awaited. Casualties light for rangers, heavier for invaders. The wildfire mist left nasty burns on half a dozen enemies, but spared timber, just as hoped. They bound the sleeping worm with rune-woven chains, nestled in a makeshift hollow near Grove to recover. Maidan inspected wounds, determining it would live if infection avoided. A prisoner handler explained name. Star Eater, last offspring of some Volantine corsair brood. Evening council convened around 2 dragons slumbering in different cradles, 1 newborn, 1 adolescent. Dilemma heavier than victory. Kill larger dragon? Release. Attempt taming. Janna advocated ransom. Sell to Highgarden for ship loans. Torment wanted to stage contest of bravery riding it beyond the wall. Rusk feared keeping it invited siege. John listened, brow furrowed. Arya, arms bandaged, voiced measured thought. Star Eater chose violence because violence chose it first. If we kill beasts for men's sins, we become butchers. Teach it new song. Blossom nodded. 2 flames now seek balance. Decision reached. Keep Star Eater under healing guard, exposing it daily to Ashen Wing's calmer presence. Hoping Pack imprint overcame war training. Weeks passed. Dragon hide knit. Cataract eye cleared under Greenseer salve. Ashen Wing grew fast. Wingspan now 3 paces. Voice a chirping trumpet. It often perched atop Star Eater's horn ridge, grooming loose scales. Larger dragon tolerated, sometimes crooning. Word of victory spread with mythic swell. Small folk hailed rangers as dragon tamers. Lords fretted. King's Landing demanded inspection. John agreed, but on his terms. Each delegation must walk valley where Reaver blood still stained. Must witness saplings cut yet mended. Must sit at council where even a child might speak. Many balked. Those who came, left changed. Through summer, the order expanded further. Settlers petitioned to build cottages under ranger charter, growing barley and flax in peace. A trading post sprouted at Ember Point, manned by Gianna's kin, where whalers bargained ambergris for iron. The order minted its own brass trade token bearing compass direwolf on one face, leaf-framed flame on the other. Arya took Star Eater on first controlled flight come harvest moon to Taitu. She rode behind Neck Ridge, steering with soft-spoken Valyrian lullaby Sam had translated. They soared above shivering aspens, Ashenwing flitting alongside like a crimson shadow. Below, cheers rose. But not all eyes watched with goodwill. From far south, a red priestess in ruby mask dreamed nightly of wolves dancing with dragons, and saw in flame the sigil she must snuff. Sons of the harpy remnants in Marine heard, riding to sell-sail comrades. Even in distant Ashai, whispers of a green conclave troubled warlocks. With fairest weather, John traveled to Winterfell to address Northern Lords moot. He brought Ashenwing on perch wagon, not as threat, but emblem. Inside Great Hall he told of choice. We could have unleashed fire on foes. We chose route and road. We ask lords to plant ranger saplings on your lands, gifts of free passage, so border between realms is not wall but woven forest. Many debated, but Lady Mormont, old voice from beyond graves, rose fierce. If bastard turned watchman can grow dragons gentle, who are we to deny seedlings? The vote passed. Upon return, John found Arya drafting scroll. Her restless heart tugged again. She planned to lead eastward expedition across Shivering Sea to track dragon rumor on Smoke Isles. I must know if other hatchlings live unclaimed. John embraced her. Take Star Eater? He asked. Not yet. Trust builds slower than wings beat. She would sail instead with Gianna, leaving Ashenwing to guard sky. Departure day dawned crisp. Ashenwing glided overhead, scattering gulls. Star Eater, still too large for deck risk, bellowed farewell from cliff roost. Arya clasped Jon's forearm. "Watch the roots," she said. He returned. "Guide the wings." Her ship slipped horizon. Years distilled future into legend. The order matured. 9 watch stations, 3 dragon perches, alliances with every realm except one. Tyrannical slaver queen, rising in Volantis, now coveted dragons for chain. Star Eater bonded to Maidan's young apprentice, a shy girl named Elian, forging unlikely pair. Ashenwing reached full strength. Scales shimmering onyx shot with ruby during flights over flowering tundra. Jon's hair fully silvered. He still rose for dawn circuits, still spoke last oath at midnight pyres. He wrote treatise titled On the Balance of Flame and Root, with Sam's notes appended. Copies spread to Citadel, to Dorne, to Bravos. Some scholars scoffed. Others built new disciplines. Green flame stewardship. A decade after first sapling planting, Arya returned astride a slender river blue dragon called Tiderake, rescued from warlock pits. Her fleet bore survivors of plundered isles, Varian refugees who knew lost songs to quell rage. With them came rumor that ruby-masked priestess marched north with zealot host to claim all dragon spawn for her god. Winter winds stiffened once more. Rangers reinforced stockades, honed blades, etched new runes. Yet fear did not rule, purpose did. Children now grown took oaths alongside parents. Star Eater, Ashenwing, and Tiderake executed aerial loops above Sapling Grove, wings beating snow into spirals. On the cusp of next dawn, Jon stood upon Watchpine, looking over realm he once believed cursed. Where ruin had threatened, layered notes of hammer, harp, and dragon cry now formed symphony. Road lights twinkled far off where merchant wagons rolled under ranger escort. Ravens carried messages of harvest, surpluses. We did not tame chaos, he reflected. We invited it to dance. Beside him Arya lounged on branch, hair silvered at temples like his. She shrugged. And we keep time to the music. Below, Blossom and her kin walked the lines between saplings now towering monuments. Faces carved upon trunks smiled, eyes leaking amber each spring. Horns sounded, Eastern scouting party returning with prisoners of Red Priestess Vanguard, but no sign yet of main force. Preparations renewed, yet Jon's heart remained calm. They had roots deep, branches far, and wings ready. Whatever storm arrived would encounter not a lone wall, but a woven forest alive with watchful hearts, steel and song entwined. Ashenwing shrieked overhead, banking toward sunrise. Its shadow swept across Jon and Arya where they perched, casting them a momentary silhouette merged. Wolf and dragon, stalwart against horizon's fire. The future spooled uncertain, but so long as they endured, rangers guiding wind, trees breathing flame, dragons dreaming of peace, the watch would hold. And somewhere, in worlds yet written, children would tell tales of the night. Two Starks wove a new order from frost-kissed soil and temperamental fire, proving that even after the longest war, the dawn might still arrive on wings of hope. Frost came early that year, riding on the back of a restless northern wind that scoured bark from dead pines and twisted stream spray into silver helixes before the droplets could fall. The gift should have basked in an easy autumn, gordling squashes fat on lingering warmth. But instead, the rangers woke to brittle pools of ice and a sky as hard as hammered tin. Jon felt the change in the ache of sword-broken knuckles long before Blossom confirmed it. The seasons obeyed no natural turning now. A foreign sorcery honey-thick with zeal had drifted north ahead of its mistress, and even the weather bent a knee. The ruby-masked priestess called herself Lady of Embers. Distant rumors named her daughter to the infamous Melisandre. Other tales made her a low-born child snatched from Bravos and schooled in shadowed chambers of Volantis' Red Temple. Whether truth lay in bloodline or indoctrination mattered little. Her armies marched beneath banners of a burning tower, and her sermons promised only ash for those who refused the dawnless fire. She possessed a voice like molten brass, it was said, capable of kindling courage and terror in equal measure. And she owned three things more dangerous than any preacher's tongue: a clutch of half-grown dragons purchased from Licini pirates, a cadre of warlocks still smarting from the theft of Tiderake, and the uncanny favor of winds that always blew the direction she wished to sail. The first clash came on the coast south of Molestown. A vanguard of zealots, bare-headed men with black runes scorched into their chests, skirmished with a patrol from Cedar Station. 40 rangers, led by dour Captain Darren, fought a fighting retreat behind wicker mantlets soaked in brine to spoil burn powder arrows. The zealots howled prayers to Arya as they charged, seeming to draw strength from each burning shaft that shattered against salt-slick shields. When Tiderake stooped with furious screech, the zealots broke ranks at last, but not before Darren took a spear through his ribs. He survived, barely, borne home on a cart reeking of pitch smoke. Later, pale and shaking, he told John of what he had seen behind the zealots' lines. Cages fashioned from ribs of giant sea worms, each bearing a slumbering dragon whose scales glittered like dying coals. "They mean to waken them at Winterfell," Darren rasped. "I heard their priestess promise it. They'll set the heart tree ablaze so the whole sky can watch the north burn." John's blood chilled despite the forge heat roaring in Cedar Station's smithy. He dismissed the wounded captain to Maester Kellen's care, then summoned his council by horn code. Maedon lumbered in with streaks of soot on her cheeks. Rusk arrived white-faced, clutching parchments of intercepted ravens. Tormund barreled through the tent flap, still belting his war cloak, followed by Blossom, whose eyes seemed older than ever. John addressed them without preamble. The zealot host numbered nearly 2,000, he said, with perhaps 3 dragons between the size of Ashenwing and Star Eater. They had siege rams faced in bronze, scorpions dragged by black oxen, and a train of slave smiths forced to churn firepots day and night. But their greatest weapon was faith, not the quiet faith that warmed hearts on a winter night, but a fever that consumed human flesh like pine pitch. It would not break at the first reverse. They would fight until either their god answered or they lay as embers themselves. To meet this, John proposed a defense in 3 rings. A screen of fast cavalry archers to bleed the host across leagues of tundra. A cordon of greenseer snares, rune-veiled pits, whispering mists, alder groves tuned to disorient. And at the center, the sapling heart where Ashenwing and Star Eater would take the sky above the main ranger host. "We will not fight for thrones," John finished. "We fight for the choice to plant a tree and decide who may shelter beneath it." Plans sprang like sparks from flint. Janna sailed upriver with raiding parties to harass the zealot fleet supply barges. Maedon set the forges to night and day rhythm, folding Skagabsite edges onto new quarrels. Blossom and her kin walked wide circles, sowing cool root powder that sipped warmth from the air wherever enemy fires might mount. Tormund drilled shield walls until even scrawniest apprentices could lock formation without rattling spears. 2 days later, Arya returned from an eastern scout flight, astride a saddle harness rigged on Tiderake. Her wind-reddened face bore little expression, but her eyes told whole stories. She reported that the Lady of Embers herself marched at the host's core, borne on a litter of blackened ashwood, conducting rites that left rings of fused glass in once fertile soil. Worse, she wielded not only faith but knowledge. She recited the Compass Direwolf oath at dawn prayers, mocking it as a fledgling pact doomed to smolder. She promised her followers they would eat wolf flesh the night before they lit the world. John read pain across Arya's tight jaw and let her speak first in council. She suggested a decapitation strike by air. She and Elian on Star Eater would dive the priestess's litter while Ashenwing strafed the siege line. Cut off the head, and the host might crumble. Blossom demurred, gaze heavy. "Strike the head, and the body may thrash," she warned. "Flame without helm burns blind. A dying zealot may unleash ruin unmeasured." They argued deep into dusk. When words ran thin, John took single candle to the sapling grove and knelt beneath the tallest weirwood, now grown broader than a grown man's arm span. its carved face still youthful, but eyes weeping slow amber. He pressed brow to bark and bid the old gods grant clarity. What he heard, in wind-rustling blood-red leaves, was not counsel to spare lives or slay quicker, but a reminder that choices flower out of soil already sown. The Lady of Embers marched because hope had burned elsewhere. Somewhere, perhaps years ago, a seed of fury had been watered by old injustice. The North could not undo that, but it could refuse to echo it. At dawn he announced the compromise, a duel of faith and will witnessed openly on neutral ground. Jon would ride to parley with the priestess and challenge her. Dragon to dragon, word against word, before the first blood was spilt. If she refused or slew him out of hand, the order would have lost little they were not risking already. But if she accepted, perhaps a slender path away from apocalypse remained. No one liked it. Torment swore the very notion smelled of sheep dung. Medon insisted such a duel would be trap. Even Arya, who had once leapt dagger in hand at the Night King himself, called Jon's plan a fool's cart missing its wheels. Yet no better suggestion prevailed, and Jon owned final say. They chose the iron flats of Long Barrow Creek for the parley, a scarred expanse of cracked mud and old burial cairns where no growing thing could hide ambush. Rangers erected twin pavilions at dawn, one of plain felt stitched with leaf motifs, the other left empty for the zealots. Jon arrived clad in simple brigandine, studded with ironwood buttons, long claws slung but peace-tied. Beside him walked Blossom, whose mere presence radiated age untold, and Maester Kellen bearing parchment of the Order's founding oath. Overhead, Ashenwing circled once, then glided away to perch on a limestone crag as distant sentinel. The zealot column approached with sound like surf. Rank after rank of rag-wrapped fanatics filed between rusted cairns, their vast black and scarlet banner snapping in windless air. 3 dragons shadowed them, young but fearsome, gaunt scales gleaming as though licked by continual flame. When the litter of ashwood halted 40 paces from Jon, the ranks parted in choreographed swiftness, and the Lady of Embers ascended. She was taller than Stories, tall as Brienne, though thistle slender, and she wore a mask forged from a single ruby, etched with shifting sigils that crawled like living things when her voice struck them. Her robes were layered flame silk and soot-black gauze. Her hair, if she possessed any, hid beneath a corona of smoking crystal shards that gave impression of a perpetual crown of embers. "Snow Wolf," she greeted, and each syllable chimed uncanny harmony. "We meet at last where root fails and ash prevails." Jon inclined head. "Lady," he refused false titles. "Why drag havoc north of the neck? The long night is past. The world heals." Tiny crack of laughter came from behind mask. "Heals? I have seen ports choked with plague and orphan kings ruling dung heaps. I have watched meek farmers hang babes rather than starve together. Your order mends small patch and calls it dawn. My fire will cauterize rot." Jon kept voice iron calm. "Fire brings life if tended. Unleashed, it devours even seeds not yet sprouted. No. Seeds of wolf and tree perhaps, not seeds of flame." She turned a palm upward, and from her sleeve drifted a mote of ruby light that lengthened into thin ember ribbon, wafting skyward. "Behold, the Lord of Light hungers. He asks for pure offering. King's blood, old magic, the breath of dragons. You and yours possess all 3. Then he will go hungry," Jon replied. "I challenge you, priestess. Not by blade alone, but by witness. Beneath open sky, before both hosts. Prove your God's mercies outweigh the hope we guard." Then silence spread until one could count heartbeats. The ranks of zealots murmured. Rangers on far ridge stiffened. The priestess's mask cocked, ruby facets inventing new constellations. At length she spoke. "I accept. A trial of 7 flames. You and 3 champions of your path. I and 3 of mine. We step one by one into circle of fire. The flame will judge whose truth sings strongest. Winner takes both dragons' allegiance and the loyalty of the losing host." She paused. Refuse, and we feast on your roots. A murmur rose among Joan's council, but Blossom whispered, Fire knows truth. Let it taste. John nodded. Agreed. At dawn's first light, packs sealed, both forces withdrew to opposite sides of flats. That night rangers trudged about low fires of willow coal that gave little smoke. Sharpening edges, whispering. Ashenwing dozed near John's bedroll, head on folded wings. Star Eater paced restless semicircles until Elian lulled it with high sweet humming. Arya found John sitting alone at the periphery, combing grit from Longclaw's pommel. 7 flames, she said. You know she means sorcery, not trial by arms. John nodded. But flame is still flame. It feeds on will and breath. We have both. Who fights? I stand first. Blossom stands last. Her magic is oldest. Between you and my dawn. Arya snorted. Maester Kellen will argue. He's studied wildfire properties. Kellen lacks the hearth for open flame. I've seen his hands shake even reading scrolls on Valyria. John met her gaze. I need your certainty. She frowned but accepted. They spoke little else. Night wind clawed lines in sand. Stars wheeled overhead in silence, broken only by distant rumble of zealot chanting. Dawn bled across horizon like wine spilled upon parchment. Trial circle was etched in scorched iron filings 20 paces around. In its center roared a pyre of cedar and resin, tongues 10 feet high. The priestess stood on one rim, flanked by 3 chosen. A hulking unsullied with shaved head and greaves glowing red. A waif-thin warlock whose eyes flickered unnatural violet. And a girl no older than 10, bald, expression serene. John led his own. Arya in boiled leather-dyed ash. Maidon in apprentice-forged plate. Blossom draped in leaf-woven shawl. Ashenwing circled overhead. The zealots' dragons perched on basalt outcrop, tails flicking. Priestess raised both hands. Flame diminished as if bowed. First champions. John stepped forward. Unsullied matched him. They entered ring from opposite arcs. The fire surged between them, funneling like breathing beast. Unsullied dropped helmet and unsheathed arak, forged of gleaming red steel. John unbound Longclaw. Yet before steel met, the priestess spoke arcane phrase. Flames split into twin columns, each snaking toward combatants. John felt heat ripping breath. He grounded blade tip and began the weirwood mantra Blossom taught him. Cold water sleeps in stone, stone drinks fire, fire sighs back to water. He visualized cave spring encasing heart tree roots, Ashenwing's egg glowing yet contained. Flame nearest him flickered, lost shape, collapsed to embers at his feet. Unsullied howled confusion. He hacked at fire with arak, feeding oxygen. Column embraced him, dancing. He screamed, but held ground. A warrior bred to obey even burning pain. Still, as moments dragged, his will faltered. Flesh blistered. Visorless face blackened. At last he fell to knees outside circle. Medics smothered his body. John remained standing. Skin smoked, but unscathed. First point to rangers. Priestess's mask betrayed no emotion. She beckoned Warlock. The violet-eyed man drifted forward, palms shedding coruscations. Arya entered opposite. Maidon gripped her wrist before she went. Don't let him speak twice. The smith muttered. At center, Warlock inhaled deeply. Flame twisted into shape of coiling serpent. He exhaled phrase in liquefied Valyrian. Serpent flared toward Arya. She dove forward rather than back, rolling beneath fiery belly, slicing air with small obsidian blade. Serpent burst into 2 fragments. One veered wide, the other recoiled, chasing her. She sprint pivoted, drawing it across ring wall's iron filings. Powder erupted into silver sparks that devoured Serpent's coherence. When embers stuttered out, Warlock snarled and gestured again, only to freeze as needle's point kissed his throat. Yield, Arya hissed. Rerlor take. He never finished. He collapsed unconscious, blossoms of poppy sap dart protruding from neck. Gift courtesy Blossom had flicked unseen. Second point. Priestess stiffened. She turned to the bald child, laying fingertip on girl's brow. Remember the promise. The girl stepped forward, clutching tiny phial. Maidon entered to meet her, massive gauntlets trembling. John tensed. He had not expected a child combatant. Maidon muttered oath but obeyed. Fire thinned to flickering curtain. Girl uncorked phial, releasing single drop of oily red fluid into flames. Columns roared, blossoming dozens of child-sized silhouettes made of writhing ember. They scampered toward Maidon. The smith bellowed, swinging hammer haft. Sparks burst as illusions split around her. She swept hammer again, but silhouettes reformed from scattered coals, now crawling her boots, smoking greaves, climbing calves. Maidon gritted teeth. Metal hissed, skin underneath blistering. Arya started forward, but Blossom's arm barred her. Trial demands single will. Maidon glanced at John, eyes wild. He knelt, slammed hammer upside down into ash, and planted both palms against burning shaft. Flesh sizzled, but he roared louder than pain, channeling agony into iron. Sparks streaked upward into silhouettes, magnet drawn. One by one ember children were sucked onto hammer, fusing into molten sheath. Maidon lifted weapon now glowing white, hurled it skyward with full smith's strength. Hammer arced over ring, trailing ember chain that tore silhouettes free of her armor, and flung them outward where cool air quenched them to nothing. She staggered, hands ruined, but she stood. Girl blinked once, dropped phial, and fled weeping. Third point. Only priestess remained. She advanced, robe sleeves unfurling like wings. So be it, Leaf Witch. She called to Blossom. I shall prove my fire sovereign. Blossom glided to circle, bare feet leaving frost prints in soot. Fire is child of tree, she intoned. Wood remembers seed. Priestess raised arms. Central pyre exploded, birthing column that spanned sky. Blossom lifted palms. Frost halo blossomed around her, ice crystals spiraling into lattice that coiled up column, quenching outer edges. The air screamed where heat met cold. Priestess chanted. Column thickened, pushing frost back. Blossom whispered. Lattice thickened. On ridge, dragons reared, sensing magic tide. Ashen Wing shrieked. Star Eater responded. The zealot dragons answered with belches of flame. Wind convulsed. In ring, equilibrium wavered. Priestess's mask glowed white-hot. Blossom's shawl turned rimed ice. Mask cracked. Shawl smoldered. John stepped to edge, torn. Interfering meant forfeiture. Blossom's eyes met his, serene. She mouthed one word. Root. He understood. He unslung flask of spring water gathered from Ashen Wing's cave, water steeped in dragon heat yet cooled by earth. He dashed contents across inner circle. Where droplets struck, flame inverted, turning inside out into swirling green vapor. Priestess gasped as column faltered. Blossom thrust palms. Lattice surged, encapsulating fire, twisting it into shimmering tree made of living ice and cinder. Priestess tried last incantation, but mask shattered, shards ringing ground. She stumbled outside ring, cloak aflame. Trial ended. Rangers 4 points. Zealots none. But Priestess was not done. Maskless. Her face emerged. Smooth as glass, eyes pits of glowing coal. Cinders geysered around her. No mercy, she hissed. She flung both arms wide. On basalt ridge, her dragons shrieked, breaking chains. They launched, wings thunderous. John shouted for Ashen Wing. The fledgling, now adolescent, soared, joined by Star Eater and Tigerake wheeling from Cloudbank. Sky filled with crossing contrails of flame and frost. Blossom collapsed, spent. John sprinted to her, hauling her free. Battle above unfolded in heartbeats. Priestess's largest dragon locked claws with Star Eater. They tumbled, biting, until Ashen Wing struck from behind, ripping membrane. Wounded beast spiraled downward, crashing near Zealot center, crushing men beneath. Second dragon dove at ranger lines, breathing pale blue fire hotter than forged steel. Tigerake intercepted, smaller but quicker, leading it over Willow Mary where Greenseer laid cold root powder burst upward, snuffing flame. Icing maw and ice. Icing maw. The beast choked, clipped water, and slid across marsh into still pools that quenched its breath. Priestess screamed wordless fury. She strode toward fallen mount, arms wreathed in living fire. Arya recognized madness in that gait. She signaled Elian, who still rode Star Eaters, back. The girl deftly hooked harpoon line onto saddle ring and swooped low overhead. Arya leapt, caught line, swung wide, slung herself into Priestess' path just as Zealot Dragon's handler ranks broke. They met between cracked cairns. Priestess bathed fists in liquid flame. Arya parried with Valyrian steel short sword gifted by Sansa years prior. Metal glowed cherry where flame kissed, but did not melt. Arya danced closer, slashing robe tassels. Priestess countered with gout of fire. Arya rolled, smoke wreathing. Jon dashed forward, but Blossom gripped his arm. Not yours. Hers. Dual-spanned mere breaths. Priestess overextended on downward blast. Arya slid inside reach, blade tip under ribs between obsidian plates. A swift rip and ruby robes gasped embers. Priestess staggered, fire leaking from wound like escaping spirit. She fell to knees, clutching wound. Flame around her flickered, then extinguished, revealing mortal flesh after all. She whispered something. Jon later thought it might have been a child's name, then slumped into cooling ash. Zealot ranks buckled. Without dragon and oracle, their fanatic spark guttered. Ranger cavalry hammered flanks. Hornfoot skirmishers lured groups into ambush gullies. Within an hour, the Black Banner host surrendered. Survivors were disarmed, offered chance to swear the road and route oath, or depart south weaponless. Many chose oath. Others trudged south, staring hollow at ruined idols. In aftermath, Blossom explained Priestess had bound shards of Lightbringer myth into her very skin. Mask, robe, rituals woven round personal grief. When those bindings cracked, her power fled, leaving only human spark that could not survive its own furnace. They buried her beneath cairn of cooled glass alongside cairns she had scorned, marking grave with dragon skull, etching half-consumed by vines. Jon insisted a small wooden plaque. Here lies a voice that burned too loud. May quieter songs find her. Winter stretched uneasy, but calmer. Greenseers tended battlefield wounds of land, planting new saplings where scorched. Dragons healed. Ashenwing's breast bore soot streak that never fully vanished, a mark of first true war. Maedon forged medallions for dual champions, a hammered flame entwined by roots, presented at midwinter feast. Arya accepted hers with half smile, half sigh. Months rolled into years once more. The Ranger Charter grew beyond north. Dorne planted sentinel groves in Broken Arm valleys. A Braavosi merchant prince funded library scriptorium at Cedar Station, copying scrolls on fire management and green magic. King's Landing, seeing impossibility of seizing dragons by force, struck treaty making the gift a demilitarized cultural preserve. In return, Rangers pledged rapid response wings to any catastrophe south of Moat Cailin. Ashenwing matured full size. Wings nearly equal the extinct Vermithor, though leaner. Star Eater mellowed into guardian temperament, often napping with children climbing tail spines. Tigerake ranged seacoasts hunting giant squid, indifferent to politics. Jon aged. Silver in beard turned snow white. One crisp morning as summer waned, he walked alone through sapling grove. Now towering forest, touching carved faces one by one. Near center stood the oldest tree. Where once he had pressed brow in pleading, he pressed now in thanks. He whispered names of those lost. Darren, warlock prisoner whose real name he never learned. The bald child who survived and later became first lantern bard. The Lady of Embers. He felt the trunk pulse warm beneath his palm. He sensed presence before hearing step. Arya emerged, hair-streaked iron. She bore letter sealed wax gray. From Sam.E. He says Citadel finally ratified Ranger oaths as recognized order equal to Kingsguard. She rolled her eyes at Pomp. Only took them 3 councils. John smiled. Scholars change slower than seasons. They strolled toward cliff overlook where dragons dozed in sun. Far below, traders' caravans wound along safe road. North skies clear. We've walked long watch, John murmured. And still miles ahead, Arya replied. Smoke Isles send rumor of iceworms enslaved by shattered mage. Might need eyes. He chuckled but coughed mid-laugh. Lungs thin these days. You'll go, he said. Perhaps, she admitted. But not before Harvest Festival. Ashenwing promised to start bonfire with small breath, and children will riot if he's tardy. They laughed. Wind carried pine and distant soup spice. John thought perhaps the old gods and new had conspired to let hearts mend, not by erasing flame, but teaching it cadence. The future would birth more zealots, more lost hatchlings. He did not doubt, but roots now webbed continent, and wings soared under watch of rangers, who had learned that every fire needs hearthstone, and every forest needs sunlight. Balance, never perfect, yet endlessly pursued. That evening he wrote a final entry in his journal before banked coals. We were once guardians of a broken wall. Now we are gardeners of living sky. May those who follow keep pruning hubris and watering wonder. The dawn is no longer a promise. It is a practice. He sealed book within cedar chest, marked direwolf compass, and retired. Jon Snow died quietly that winter. Heart slowing beside hearth, Ashenwing warmed with gentle exhale. Aurora flickered green and rose overhead the night his ashes were scattered among roots of first sapling. Leaves turned color of dawn-lit embers, and dragons keened a song that started low, rose high, and faded into hush of falling snow. Spring after, Arya took command with council's acclaim, though she called herself simply Watch Captain. The order thrived, nested in emerald canopy beneath wheeling shadows of 3 dragons. Children grew hearing true tales of Starks, who forged fraternity from war's detritus, who learned to let fire and forest share same breath. And on clear nights, when crackling campfires recited sparks to stars, some swore northern lights sketched silhouette of a lone wolf pacing guard above tree line, pausing now and then to watch myriad lives choose kindness over conquest. Kandi. Panda. Rains came that spring, soft at first, and then with sudden, endless fury, as though the sky itself had broken open to mourn the old world and baptize the new Arya. Rivers swelled beyond their banks, turning the foothills to a tapestry of mirrored pools and reedy islets. The sapling groves drank deep, stretching their roots through gravel and silt and upending half-forgotten stones, so that even the pathways Jon and Arya had trod by rote since the Order's founding became shifting puzzles of green and gold. But the Rangers, children now of river and rain, welcomed the change. They built causeways out of driftwood and wild rushes, linking each station by floating bridges. Maidon's apprentices, once only smiths of steel, shaped clever rafts for swift crossings. Grain stores doubled when marsh wheat took to the flooded fields, their silvery heads rippling in time to distant dragon shadows gliding overhead. Even Ashenwing, who grew ever more majestic, found joy in the downpours. The dragon would strut through sheets of rain, wings half extended, trumpeting until half the children in the camp gathered to watch him dance with thunder. Arya, though she bore the title Watch Captain now, shunned all trappings of command save for the battered compass direwolf amulet Jon had left her. She refused the grand tent others offered, instead stringing her hammock between 2 old willows at the camp's heart, and when her new lieutenants pressed her for decrees, she only shrugged. We have roots. We have wings. Choose wisely, then tell me what you chose. The habit confounded some at first, but her quiet, restless example grew a crop of leaders instead of followers. And so, when news from the southern marches arrived, warnings of plague among the barley caravans, rumors of mercenary sellswards massing beyond the Green Fork, she did not dictate a response. She simply called council, Let every captain and every child voice their worry, and shape their plan from the many as one. Those days, Arya often found herself sitting beneath the oldest weirwood with Blossom, who had grown yet more translucent with the seasons, as if every winter thinned her mortal thread. Together they watched new children learning to read the bark's runes, or to set fireflies in patterns for nightly signals. Blossom rarely spoke now. Her voice, when it came, was thin and high, as though drawn from some deeper wind in the world's surface. Yet Arya cherished the rare stories she shared, of the age before men, of green dreams woven into river mist, of how fire and root might sing together, if the song were long and patient enough. The balance Jon had forged with sweat and grief held. The treaty with King's Landing, still fragile as an unhatched egg, remained in force. Gold cloaks rode north no more, and even the Ironborn, stung by memory of Star Eater's last flight, traded rather than raided. Southron merchants now arrived in the gift by the score, bartering casks of sweet wine and rare herbs for the safety of passage. Lady Sansa, Queen in the North, wrote monthly in her slanted hand, promising aid should trouble return and warning, with a sister's candor that the old families of Winterfell could not be trusted to stay content with peace forever. Arya wrote back only once for every 3 letters received, and Sansa never pressed for more. Yet beneath the growth and plenty, darkness lingered. The Lady of Embers had been defeated, not erased. Scattered zealots still haunted the fens and ruins, burning willow groves and leaving signs in blood on stones. The eldest dragon Star Eater bore a patch of old burn on his right side, a mark left by the last of the priestess warlocks before he vanished into the icebound east. Greenseers reported strange visions, a blue flame wandering the far shore, the sound of hammers beneath the shivering sea, voices chanting in a tongue older than High Valyrian. Arya listened, but she did not tremble. She had seen too many prophecies end in dust, too many dark omens break like river ice when faced with flesh and will. She ordered more patrols to the eastern border, posted a squad at the river crossings, and sent a letter to the Braavosi merchant prince, whose ships now called at Ember Point, asking only, "If you see ships with black sails or cloaks of blue flame, send word by fast-oared galley, no questions asked." The reply came swift and terse. Always. On the longest day of summer, a shadow passed over the midday sky. So swift, so sudden, that even the children fell silent mid-play. Ashenwing was aloft, yes, and Star Eater basked on the highest ridge. But this shadow was vaster, more ancient, trailing lightning behind like a wedding train. Tiderake, the blue dragon, screamed a challenge, and the thing in the sky wheeled once and vanished beyond the southern clouds. Arya alone did not look away. She felt the hair rise on her neck as Blossom whispered at her side, "Ice, not fire, not death nor life. Change." That night, Blossom asked Arya to walk with her to the oldest spring in the woods. They moved slowly, Arya supporting the frail shoulder, Blossom's bare feet leaving no imprint on the moss. There, in the half-light, Blossom gave her the last of the obsidian petals. "Black is the heart of winter. When you hear the song," Blossom said, "plant this beneath a stone where rain pools but never floods. Root and fire will guard it." Then, with a sigh, she pressed her palm to Arya's brow, eyes clouded with visions, and said, "You will walk farther than any wolf before you. You will teach a dragon to run and a forest to fly. This is my last gift." Then, by dawn, Blossom was gone, leaving only a tangle of willow branches arranged in the shape of a sleeping woman beside the spring. Arya wept there, the first tears she had shed in years. She planted the petal where Blossom had asked. The rains that month were heavier still, but the stone never washed away, and moss grew green and thick atop it. Autumn brought scouts from Dorne, brown-skinned, quick-tongued women who wore silver rings through their noses and bore no banners save a strip of sky-blue silk. They requested audience with the watch captain, speaking only of a matter that cannot cross parchment or wind. Arya met them in the sapling glade, surrounded by rangers and 3 dragons in quiet attendance. The Dornish leader, a woman called Ilyena, knelt and offered a pouch of saffron and a strip of dried lizard lion meat. "We come seeking a shield," Ilyena said. not for Dorne alone but for the children of every borderland. The blue flame priests gather beyond the Boneway. They twist water into poison, promise ice that burns and never melts. Already, wells freeze at noon, and night fire does not warm. Then, Arya listened in silence, weighing every word. "We are not a kingdom. We are a watch," she replied. "But if you are kin to the roads and the roots, then your danger is ours." She dispatched 2 ranger teams to ride south with Ilyena, warning each not to judge too quickly. "If they fight with ice, we must bring fire and memory both," she told them. "But we do not burn what we can heal." That winter, ice came creeping in ways no one had foreseen. The rivers froze from the bottom up, clear as glass and impossibly thick. Wolves from beyond the wall, their coats silvered with hoarfrost, were seen at the very edges of the gift, slinking away before dawn. One morning, a patrol found the body of a zealot. Lips blue, hands twisted in agony, every finger tipped with glassy ice. No wounds, only cold. Except for the eyes, which were open, unblinking, reflecting the sky in mirrored miniature. Arya called council. She had Star Eater patrol the skies, Ashenwing watching the east, and Tiderake circling the river mouths. She wrote to Sansa and received word back that the North's own dead, old men and infants both, were not always staying buried. But the Order's sapling groves and their sacred stones seemed immune. Even in the worst nights, when the wind howled and the sun barely rose, the roots and dragons held warmth at their heart. Spring was slow to return, but when it did, it came not as thunder or blossom, but as the gentle thawing of stone and the return of birdsong. The Order did not forget the winter's shadows. Under Arya's quiet direction, every ranger post was doubled in strength. Every child taught the old green words and the new Arya. Stories of blossom were told each evening at the fire. Every year, more young men and women came north, seeking to join what was now called the Last Watch, not because they expected an ending, but because they wished to stand where the world's changes began. Arya's own changes were subtle. She grew leaner, eyes darker, hair streaked with the silver of command. Yet she never lost her habit of walking alone at dusk, often accompanied by Ghost's last littermate, or by Star Eater's youngest hatchling, a copper-scaled dragon with mismatched eyes. And she still dreamed. Some nights she saw Jon, younger and smiling, perched on the edge of a new-built bridge watching children swim. Sometimes she dreamed of the Lady of Embers, face now pale and quiet, building cairns on a shore of endless glass. But most often she dreamed she ran through rain-soaked pines, a great white wolf at her side, and overhead, the sky swarmed with dragons whose wings sang harmony with the whisper of leaves. As years became decades, and the roots of the ranger groves entwined with the bones of the gift, travelers said the land itself grew different. Spring was always longer, and the winters, though fierce, were survivable so long as one kept to the roads where the dire wolf banners and the dragon medallions hung. The old houses, the Karstarks, the Umbers, even the Arryns, sent their children north to serve one season as rangers before claiming titles. It became a mark of honor and a matter of pride to serve in the Order, where one learned not only to fight, but to endure, to build, to remember. When Arya's hair was as white as Jon's had been, she gathered the council for what she declared would be her last moot. She walked through the sapling forest, now a living cathedral, and named her successor, a quiet, gentle girl called Bronwyn, whose father had been a free folk chieftain and whose mother a maester from Old Town. She placed the compass direwolf around the girl's neck and charged her not to rule, but to guide, as Jon had guided her. Choose roots and wings, never walls. That night, Arya slipped away with the copper hatchling and vanished into the rain-wet forest. Some claim to have seen her years later in Bravos, old and laughing, fencing with a one-eyed man on a bridge. Others swore she wandered the frozen shorelines far east, teaching ice walkers the meaning of warmth, or rode at the head of a dragonflight, scouting the edge of the world. The truth, if there is such a thing, became legend, but the Last Watch endured. Through generations of peace and war, of flood and frost, the order John and Arya built never failed. Dragons kept their watch above the groves, children learned the old songs, and new roots found fertile earth in every passing season. When the darkest clouds rolled in, and rumors of cold or flame or plague stirred in distant corners, riders set out, sometimes on foot, sometimes on wing, always with the compass direwolf sewn to their cloak. In every village and holdfast, people told stories by firelight, of Jon Snow, who faced fire and never burned, and Arya Stark, who led wolves and dragons into peace, of Blossom, whose laughter softened the hardest winters, and of dragons who learned to love the forests, of rangers who stood at the crossroads between change and ruin and always chose life. And so, year after year, the order endured, their song neither fire nor root alone, but the weaving of both. For as long as the last watch held its vigil, hope was not a promise, it was a practice. Roots and wings, road and sky, a story still sung wherever dawn found a sapling strong enough to weather any storm. Anjen. Years spun outward, gentle and relentless, drawing their slow spirals across the gift and far beyond its old borders. Seasons turned, saplings thickened, dragons grew long and wise, and the last watch itself became both cradle and legend. Arya's name faded from the council lists, replaced by stories of her dragonflight at the world's edge, of her sword that never dulled, of her quiet mercy for the lost and wild. The council's table, once a patchwork of rough planks, became a polished round carved with direwolf, leaf, and dragon. Branwen presided there not as queen, but as keeper of the web. 100 captains, maesters, woodwalkers, and free folk sharing burden and song alike. Each year brought new faces, new customs. The children of the forest, their numbers now only a trickle, sent a single envoy each spring. Not always the same, and sometimes so young the others blinked to see their sap-green eyes and hair tangled with bird down. These green children were welcomed without question, trained alongside the youngest recruits. Every council began with silence, while the children whispered to the sapling heart, their words weaving through roots, waking old memories no human could ever recall. Branwen ruled with open hands. She allowed the dragons, now 3 full-grown and a host of lesser hatchlings, the run of the sky and river. Each, in its own way, claimed a valley, a copse, a winding mountain pass. Ashenwing alone remained near the central grove, the dragon's massive body often wrapped about the weirwood roots, wings folded to shelter younglings, amber eyes reflecting the council fire's glow on cold nights. Star Eater ranged wide but always returned when storms brewed, his old burn scar shining silver-black under rain. Tigerake was seen less, rumored to have flown east to the Shattered Isles, and made new nests in the ruins of Valyria, returning once each decade to circle above the gift, calling out in a trumpet that left every heart trembling with hope and dread. The Rangers changed too. By the 3rd generation, the Watch had become a mosaic of all the world's peoples. Dark-skinned Dothraki riding the marshlands, Summer Islanders teaching the youngest to swim rivers and throw spears, Ironborn mending nets in spring flood, Lyseni tending the new glasshouse gardens at Ember Point, Septon's daughters teaching green songs beside the children of the forest. Each learned the 3 tongues of the gift: the Old Tongue, the speech of the South, and the subtle hand language of scouts. No bloodline ruled. When captains fell, the council named successors by vote and by ritual in the grove. Each new leader swore oaths not to a king, but to the saplings and the road, to the children and the wind, to the memory of root and the promise of sky. The last watch became known far and wide as the border that held back disaster not through force, but through witness and swift, unbreakable kinship. Sellswords who raided, learned to trade. Sorcerers came seeking secrets and left, if they were wise, with humility and friendship. Sometimes, in the deepest winter, even the dead came walking. But never once did a corpse rise within the ring of saplings. Those who tried found their way home, alive and changed, or else vanished into the wild, leaving only a whisper that the root called me. Not all years were bright. One spring, the sky blackened with ash when the volcanoes of the Smoke Isles erupted. Tiderake was seen guiding cloud-lost merchant ships to safe haven in the dark. But the next summer crops failed and sickness raged. Branwen and her council sent rangers south with wagons of grain and glass jars of wild honey. In return, the starving towns sent their orphans north. 100 children, some so young they could not speak. Branwen herself saw them into the sapling grove, where Ashenwing bent his head, letting each touch his snout and receive his warm, rumbling greeting. Another year brought the threat of empire. Queen Alex of Old Town sent envoys, grand lords with perfumed gloves, soldiers in gilded plate. They came seeking a dragon's egg for the stability of the realm, and a promise that the Watch would send its best to train her new order of Griffin Knights. The council received them with patience, offering tea and candied walnuts, and explained again that neither dragons nor rangers could be bought or bound. Queen Alex's envoys departed in fury. Alix herself sent word that the world will soon be remade, with or without your song. Branwen had the warning etched in stone at the council table's foot. We are not a wall to be broken, but a forest to be walked, a song to be learned. The blue flame priests, driven from Dorne, appeared in the foothills of the Frostfangs, promising ice-made miracles. The rangers watched and waited. When the priest's fire failed to heal a dying child, Branwen herself walked to their tent and knelt. She spoke quietly of Blossom, of roots that drink both sunlight and sorrow. And when she was done, the priest left his staff in the river and joined the Watch, taking vows beside the youngest. As the generations passed, the Watch's deeds shaped the North and, slowly, the world. Peace endured not because trouble ceased, but because the Watch met every threat with open hands before it drew the sword. When fire threatened, dragons dropped rainwater from storm clouds. When frost crept in, saplings and willow root drew it out, and green singers taught new songs to warm the coldest night. When a southern war threatened to draw the gift into feudal strife, Branwen sent a procession, 100 children led by Ashenwing and Star Eater, singing the song Jon Snow had once hummed at dawn. No army could raise a blade to children and dragons in harmony. Some changes came quietly. An elder named Tomas, once a street orphan from Old Town, built the lantern house at Ember Point, a beacon of colored glass burning bright every night, guiding ships, travelers, and lost spirits alike. A free folk huntress named Vigdis planted the first orchard on the old battlefield, teaching rangers to graft apple and pear so the bones beneath might grow fruit. A maester's son designed the water wheels that harnessed the spring floods for grain, giving the gift its first surplus to trade for learning and peace. The oldest green children grew old, then vanished, walking out beyond the sapling groves to become roots themselves. Or so the stories went. Each time one left, the trees shivered, and the wind whispered new riddles for the rangers to ponder. Some nights, the auroras shimmered in shapes that seemed almost human. A girl dancing with wolves, a boy flying on dragonback, an old woman weaving light into leaves. New perils arose and were met. Raiders from the Shadowlands, armed with smoke powder, learned the hard way that neither root nor flame would be tamed by terror. On a night of blue auroras, the dead once more walked in the far east. But a ranger called Naya, Bronwyn's own daughter, rode out on Star Eater, bearing a torch of obsidian and willow. When she returned, the dead were gone, and a single sapling, unlike any before, grew in the eastern snow, its leaves pale blue. So the Watch held, year after year, age after age. Memories layered upon memories. The Order's archives, once a single chest in Jon's tent, now filled a sunken library beneath the roots, guarded by children and dragons alike. Scholars came to study, but left their books open and unfinished. For the stories changed as swiftly as the sky. When Branwen grew old, her hair silver and eyes bright with the green light of the heart trees, she gathered the council for a feast beneath the auroras. She thanked every ranger and every dragon, every child and every green singer, and asked only that they remember the first vow: to choose life, not rule, to be a forest, not a wall. That night, she sang Blossom's lullaby to the youngest, and in the morning she was gone, leaving only her cloak of woven river rushes and the compassed direwolf on a branch. The council named a new watch captain, Naya, now grown wise. She wore no medallion, only a crown of spring flowers and a small stone of blue obsidian. The pattern continued. When Naya's time was done, another would rise, chosen by all, carrying only memory and story forward. And still, in every spring, new saplings appeared in the groves, each root twining into the old, each leaf catching sunlight that once fell on Arya, John, and Blossom. In every autumn, the dragons led the children to the riverbanks, showing them the currents and teaching them to watch for signs of change. By then, the world knew the gift as the place where no tyrant ruled, no war lasted, no hunger endured, and no story ever truly ended. Kings and queens came as guests, the poor came as kin. Some stayed, some wandered away, always returning in story or song. When the children of the forest were finally gone, the trees bore their faces, and the rangers kept their runes alive. In the end, it was said, the last watch would never truly end. As long as there was a road to walk, a seed to plant, a dragon's cry at dawn, a wolf's shadow in the snow, the watch would hold. Every dawn, the saplings caught the first light and bent it, painting the world in the green-gold promise of hope and vigilance. Every dusk, the council fire burned and voices rose, new songs and old woven together into the single unbroken vigil of roots and wings. And somewhere, just beyond the heart of the forest, the old names remained: John and Arya, Blossom and Ashenwing, Ghost and Star Eater. Stories waiting for their next telling, every ranger a thread in the long tapestry, living proof that in the end, the greatest watch is not for enemies or omens, but for each other, and for the dream of a world where both root and sky can thrive. Okay. The world beyond the gift moved restlessly onward, kingdoms rising and waning as new banners rose in Old Town, Bravos. Even in the regreened ruins of Valeria where silver towers rose from glassy isles, but the last watch endured as living memory, never changing and never the same. To those who rode, the old kings rode north, past the towns that had grown where once only wildlings had camped. The approach to the gift was marked by a slow change in the very air. A hush, a clarity to the wind, the clean ring of hammers and laughter, mixed as men and women labored beneath dragon wings, and the silent faces of the heartwoods. It was an age now since the passing of Arya and Bronwyn, and a new generation led the watch. Naya's children, born of 2 rivers and a forest, guided the Order's council from a hall built not of stone, but of living trees, arching branches woven over years by dragon heat and the gentle urging of green singers. Here the council table grew directly from the roots of the great weirwood, white-veined and red-leaved, whose carved face watched each gathering with an expression both mournful and amused. Every council began in silence, as had always been the way, and then one by one the captains would speak, some with tales of distant trouble, others with news of new inventions, trade, and the small conflicts of daily life that mattered more than the distant clamor of thrones and crowns. The dragons, Ashenwing now long in tooth and wise beyond reckoning, Star Eater heavy and slow but more gentle than ever, Tiderake a visitor like a half-remembered dream, Reach attended in their fashion, lending presence and heat to the coldest evenings. There was, in these years, a new threat. Not fire, not ice, but a restless, rootless hunger, a longing for change. The children who came north to join the watch no longer fled war or winter. They came in curiosity, in hope, in the search for purpose. Some found what they sought and stayed, taking oaths and sapling tokens, learning the 3 songs of the watch: the road song, the green singer's hush, and the old dragon cry, now softer, more measured. Others wandered out again, returning south to shape the world with lessons carried from the last watch. Sometimes in the hush of midnight, as auroras danced through the boughs and rain pattered down from the roof of living branches, the new watch captain, Darren, a sharp-eyed woman with hair, the color of jet and scars along both arms, would recall the old stories with her closest, the tale of John and Arya,
of Blossom and her children, of the first egg in the cave and the blue flame that never truly died.
Darren's own father had come north as a thief, seeking to steal a dragon's scale. He'd left the gift as a gardener, content with a plot and a story. Now his grandchildren roamed the groves at night, and it was they who first noticed the changes in the saplings. It began with a subtle shift. New leaves, pale at first, and then flashing with veins of silver and blue as the sun set. The children said the trees sang at night, harmonizing with the dragon's soft thunder and the wolves' distant calls. Maesters and green singers came to listen, debating whether the saplings had taken some spark of magic from the passing of Blossom, or from the long companionship of dragons. Some argued it was simply the world's change, a new age, a new magic rising from the compost of the old. But one night, in the 4th year of Darren's watch, the song grew louder. A storm swept in from the east, lightning dancing on the rivers, thunder shaking the saplings to their roots. All through the night, rangers and dragons alike woke restless, and the heart tree's face shed tears of golden sap. By morning, the oldest of the new saplings stood transformed, its leaves an impossible color, blue gold shimmering in the wind, its bark hard and clear as glass, reflecting every color of dawn. In the years that followed, more changes came. Some children born beneath the heart trees could sense each other's thoughts, or walk the woods in silence that no grown ranger could pierce. A few, it was whispered, could call the smallest hatchling dragons from sky or river with a single word. Others learned to heal wounds that should have been mortal, or to coax apples from winter branches, or to grow saplings from seed in a single summer. There was unease at first among the council. Darren called for a gathering, the largest since Arya's last moot. Every living captain came, from the river ports to the frostfang groves. Star Eater lay in a great ring about the heart tree, Ashenwing high above, wings stretched like a canopy against the rain. Tiderake returned from the eastern seas and perched atop the hall's highest arch. In that council, voices rose. Some argued that the watch power was becoming too great, that the old vow, to serve as witness, not rulers, must be kept at all cost. Others feared what might come from beyond the world, drawn by the new magic, the return of the others, or worse, the curiosity of distant, hidden gods. Darren listened, her gaze level, her hands folded. When all had spoken, she stood and said, "Our charge is not to hold the world back, nor to rule it, but to let it grow. If these gifts are rooted in the old vows, let us trust the root, let us trust each other. The world will always change." No one dissented, and so, the watch endured. Years blurred onward, and as the new children grew, so too did the stories. Some left the gift for good, journeying to Valyria or the distant east, returning only with news of wonder. Cities where trees grew in the streets, dragons flying as far as the red waste, green singers teaching in bravas, watch medallions worn in Old Town as a mark of honest trade. Some stayed. In each, the seed John and Arya planted flowered differently. There was Lyra, who tamed a wild frostworm in the far north and brought it home, only to see it settle among the dragons in peace. There was Sarn, who built the bridge across the shivering sea, allowing pilgrims and traders from Essos to reach the gift without fear. There was Mara, who composed the new songs of roots and wings, sung in every language from Lys to Skagos, even among the Ironborn. There was Ashenwing's last brood, the golden hatchling called Light Leaper, who became a symbol for hope from the summer isles to the wall. Even the old wounds faded. The zealots, once scattered, found new purpose, many joining the watch, their blue flame rituals transformed into blessings for river crossings and harvests. When a southern king threatened war, he found the watch's roads barred not by rangers, but by ordinary folk, standing hand in hand, singing the root song. The king's army turned back, and the watch sent only a basket of apples as explanation. Through it all, the dragons and the saplings remained at the heart. When Tiderake finally died, his bones were left on the cliffs overlooking the sea, and the children wove blue flowers through the ribcage. Ashenwing's last flight circled the gift 3 times before vanishing in the west, his shadow crossing every sapling, every hearth. Star Eater, oldest of all, became a legend. It was said his roar could still be heard in the deepest mists, when the world needed warning. As the centuries passed, the world outside changed. Empires rose, then softened, then learned to live with one another. The Watch became less a boundary than a beacon, a place where people came to learn, to seek wisdom, to walk among the saplings, and listen for the oldest stories. The road and the root, the wing and the flame. These were the gifts John and Arya had given, and each new watcher added their own thread to the tapestry. Every year, on the first day of spring, the council gathered beneath the heart tree, its face now worn smooth by centuries of rain and wind and gentle hands. The watch captain, no longer named for lineage or for deed, but for willingness to listen, would recite the old vow. We stand for those who walk free. We guard root and road. We keep watch with chosen kin. And while we breathe, the wild may bloom. Children would be named to the watch with dragon's song overhead, their medallions pressed to the tree's bark, and then worn always at their heart. Each was given a seed, sometimes a sapling, sometimes a dragon scale, sometimes only a story. This is your root, the watch captain would say. This is your road. Grow as you must. In the shadows, ghosts of the old names lingered. Sometimes, at dusk, a watcher would glimpse a girl and a wolf beneath the trees, or a boy standing in the river's mist, or Blossom's face smiling among the youngest saplings. Sometimes, in the hush before dawn, the dragons themselves would cry out. One note, deep and resonant, that echoed through the forest, the rivers, the roads, and every heart. So it was, and so it would be, as long as stories endured. For the last watch had become more than oath, more than place, more than song. It was the seed of every hope, the road between every world, the shelter at the heart of the storm. And in every spring, as the new leaves unfurled in colors no one had ever seen, the gift was remade, a promise that no war, no winter, no hunger or hatred could ever truly end the dream that John and Arya had planted. That root and wing might share the sky, and the road ahead would always be open, watched by those who remembered the word could always begin again. Ya, Ka. The centuries of the last watch layered themselves one atop the next, each leaving rings like the sapling groves themselves, a living memory in bark and blood and breath. Outside the gift, time took on the rushing quality of floodwater. Empires unspooled, rose and receded. Faiths clashed and joined. New sciences sent men and women skyward in floating lanterns and glass-winged ships, to places mapped only in dream and story. Yet at the heart of the north, beneath the ever-widening crowns of the sapling forest and the patient gaze of ancient, faceless weirwoods, the watch endured, a bright, slow-burning fire under all that ceaseless wind. By the 1000th year, though no one counted precisely anymore, the gift's borders had faded as the roads themselves webbed continents. Where there were once walls of ice and snow, now there ran ribbons of living trees. The sapling oaks and bloodwoods and frosty beeches joined by willow and pale-needled pines from lands so far the stars themselves were strange above them. The watch sent out shoots, literally and figuratively. Rangers who rode dragons east across the narrow sea, carrying seeds to the shattered ruins of Valeria and new groves along the Jade Straits. Walkers on foot whose oath medallions, now of wood, bone, or blue glass, were welcomed from Skagos to Old Volantis. The council's round, still rooted in the oldest weirwood at the forest's heart, was now a parliament of many shapes and voices. There were dragon riders, descendants in spirit of Arya and Naya, who led only in times of war or pestilence, and green singers who grew whole villages from saplings in a single moon's turn. There were children of all nations, and even, it was rumored, those born of the far north where the dead had once ruled. Eye-side, quiet, walking always in pairs. Once in each generation, the watch captain would call a moot that drew every outlying kin and order. They came by sky, on the backs of dragons still blue and gold and copper, and sometimes strange hues from beyond the world. By river, in reed boats and silver-prowed skiffs. And by land, riding horses, moose, camels, even the patient giant stags bred for the coldest marshes. The moot lasted a season, with every song and every tale retold anew, and each time the sapling groves stretched their shadows a little further, welcoming every story as a ring within the tree. There were threats, always. Some were old, the last ice priests of the blue flame, defeated but not entirely erased, who crept from the broken hills in years of famine. Others were strange and new. The black fleet of the shattered west, whose ski ships bore engines of fire that even the dragons feared. The quiet plague, which stilled the hearts of the eldest without pain or fever. The night mirrors, a silent sect that moved between dreams, sowing doubt where hope grew strong. But for each threat, the watch had its answer. Against fire, water, and living root. Against hunger, the stores and lessons of generations. Against fear, the council's memory. Rangers who stood, unbroken, even when loss darkened the woods and the sky. They never took up rule. When the Black Fleet came seeking tribute, a moot of all the rangers greeted them with gifts. Bread, seed, songs, the story of Blossom's last petal, and a single scale from Ashen Wing's last brood. When the quiet plague stalked the elderly, it was the children who cared for the sick, sleeping beside their beds and singing the root song until morning. And in time, the plague, like so many winters, ebbed and passed. Each spring, the youngest would plant a new sapling at the heart of the grove. The choosing was by lot, but all were present, and the planting itself had become a dance, half in song and half in silence, the children's hands pressing earth, their medallions catching dawn's first light. The watch captain, regardless of age or origin, spoke only a single sentence at the moment the sapling took root. This is your story. Grow as you must. Choose your path with open hands. The dragons changed too. Their broods grew more varied, some small as hounds and nesting in the river islets, others vast as the longship hall at Ember Point. Where once Ashenwing's shadow was the only dread in the sky, now 100 dragons soared on festival nights, their colors shifting with the lights of the aurora, scarlet and blue and gold, green and bronze, and sometimes white as cloud, their wings scribed with living runes. The rangers no longer named them all. Instead, the dragons named themselves in song, and only their companions knew those names, guarding them as secret gifts. Sometimes, though less and less with the centuries, the old stories stirred anew. A stranger would appear on the gift's border, cloaked and silent, eyes gray as storm, or a wolf, white-muzzled with age, would lead a lost child from the edge of the wild, and vanish as soon as safe passage was reached. These tales were always told at the moot, and always met with the same soft awe. In the heart tree's rings, it was said, you could see the shadow of Arya Stark, forever young and running, and the outline of Jon, broad and watchful, standing just beyond her in the endless wood. The forest itself became more than home. It was the archive, the vault, the shelter. Villages grew under the groves, their houses woven from living branches and thatched with willow bark. Lantern House at Ember Point grew into a university and hospital, a place where healers and botanists and dragon tamers learned together. The rivers teemed with sturgeon, the marshes with wild fowl, the hilltops with sheep, and the deepest valleys with apple and chestnut, fruit so abundant that no winter brought one. And always, at the center, the council fires burned. The watch captain, sometimes an elder, sometimes barely more than a child, sometimes not even human, presided with the same old oath. We keep watch, not to rule but to guide. It was not always easy. Now and then, a watch captain faltered, growing proud or fearful, or a ranger would seek to use the dragons for private gain. When this happened, the council recalled the story of the Lady of Embers, and the price of burning too hot. They would plant a new sapling and let the roots teach humility. No one was exiled. No one cast out. Only the oath, and the story, and the constant vigil. The understanding that each was both watcher and watched, both guardian and guest. One winter, so cold the rivers froze to the bottom, and the auroras painted the sky all day, a new danger came, a silence spreading from the east. Swallowing sound, color, even memory. The saplings at the border faded, leaves falling without wind. The youngest children forgot their own names, and even the dragons grew restless. Huddling in circles and singing low dirges, no ranger could quite translate. The council gathered, every seat full, every dragon present. The watch captain then, a woman with skin as dark as river mud and eyes bright as moonlit ice, stood and called for stories, for every watcher to tell their oldest tale. From the time of John and Arya, of Blossom and Ashenwing, of the first egg and the last duel. All night the council spoke, weaving song and memory, until the dawn came. The silence receded. The saplings shook themselves green, and it was understood that the true enemy had always been forgetting, that to tell the story was to keep the world alive. That spring, the watch planted 1,000 new saplings, one for every story told, and sent runners and dragon riders out to every crossing and every shore, carrying not warning, but welcome, bread and seed, the root song and the promise of kinship. From the high boughs, it was said, one could see the world's curvature now, a horizon rimmed with sapling groves, dragon wings, and distant fires of 1,000 smaller watches, each bearing some piece of the old vow. The world had not become perfect. Trouble came and went, but war was now rare and brief, for every army found its way blocked by the song and the shadow of the watch. And so, beneath the canopy, the moot was held each year, stories and names joined in a chain, longer than memory. The watch endured, its charge ever the same, not to hold power, but to tend its seed, not to preserve an old world, but to welcome a new, not to build a wall, but to keep every road open, watched and remembered, so that no child, no dragon, no dream would ever be truly lost. And if, sometimes, in the last hush before dawn, a watcher glimpsed a white wolf in the snow, or a dark-haired girl running with a copper-scaled hatchling, or heard Blossom's laughter in the leaves, well, it was only the world remembering itself, and singing one more time the song that never truly ended. For as long as roots stretched deep and wings soared high, as long as the last watch gathered in the heartwood, the world would always have a story, and always, always a watcher to sing it. In the 1001st spring, since the watch was named, as the sun lifted over the endless green and silver canopy of the gift, the forest's song deepened, a chorus not only of wind and dragon, but of memory itself. Beneath the oldest heart tree, its bark now a mosaic of histories, the faces of past rangers, children of the forest, and dragons all discernible among the roots. The watch captain, Arya of the Riverlands, called the moot to order with the same words spoken by John and Arya in ages past. Let us listen before we speak. Let us witness before we judge. They gathered in the open, beneath lanterns strung from living branches. The council was larger than ever, drawn from the corners of the known world, Sarnish from the north with ice in his beard, and a story of a town made entirely of living boats. Ki Rin, who had ridden a river dragon from the Dothraki Sea, bringing seeds for water lilies that bloomed even in frost. Maya, whose voice could calm even the youngest hatchlings, and whose children slept each night curled with 3 tiny dragons in their hammock. Every watcher bore something of the world beyond, a braid, a scar, an accent, a memory. And so the watch circle was never quite closed, never finished, always welcoming one more. Arya called on the children to begin. It was a custom now. The youngest watched most closely, remembered best, and so were first to speak. A girl of no more than 7, with hair the color of birch bark and eyes ringed in the green of new leaves, told how she'd found a nest of silver eggs in a willow, and that one had hatched at her touch. A boy followed, whispering of a night when the trees had spoken his name, and led him to a lost child, blue with cold, who was warmed by Ashenwing's breath, and now lived in the kitchen, learning songs from a Lyseni cook. The council's business began as it always did, with the recitation of the year's crossings. Trade caravans from beyond the Boneway. New roads opened west through mountains once impassable, riverboats now traveling all the way from the free cities to the gift, bearing silks and stories, and sometimes, in the bottom of their hulls, seeds of trees never seen before. There were threats as always. Pirate lords in the east who demanded tolls, a false prophet in the south whose sermons promised the return of old cruel gods, a creeping illness that withered vines in 3 villages on the northern marches. Each tale was met, not with command, but with a flurry of volunteers, rangers choosing their own posts, green singers sending word through roots, dragon riders planning watch flights that would carry word and warning in a single sweep of wing. As the sun rose higher, dragons descended from their roosts. Light Leaper, gold and wild, performed her customary spiral above the moot, scattering a rain of sunlit dew from her scales. Star Eater, immense and slow, circled the glade, his great eyes settling on each watcher in turn. A living benediction, a memory of every year since the watch began. The hatchlings scrambled at the edge of the circle, tumbling over each other, nipping at woolen cloaks and trying to clamber up trunks slick with morning rain. After the council, the festival began, as it did each year. The bread broken, honey passed, casks uncorked, the children singing the root song as the elders kept time with walking sticks and medallions, some worn to smoothness by centuries of hands. The sapling groves now stretched to the horizon, each tree a living history. Its rings a record not only of rain and sun, but of the choices and hopes of all who attended it. The watch captain walked among the revelers, listening to every story, every new vow spoken beneath the lanterns. She paused beneath the heart tree, where a young girl sat with her arms wrapped round her knees, watching the celebration with wide, searching eyes. "What troubles you?" Alara asked, her voice gentle as river silt. "I dreamed of fire," the girl whispered. "Not the fire of dragons or even the old wildfires. A cold fire, like ice that burns, coming from the far east. In my dream, the saplings turned to glass and shattered, and I was alone, except for a white wolf who told me to run and find the root that never dies." Alara knelt in the loam, her hand steady on the child's shoulder. "We dream what the world fears," she said, "but also what it hopes. Fire and ice are both old and always will be, but as long as one root grows, the dream cannot end. Tell the heart tree your dream tonight, and I will ask the dragons to listen too." The girl nodded, comforted, and soon joined the other children as they spun beneath the low branches, playing at flight and howl, casting shadows that flickered like ghosts of the founders. Arya's sprint, Joan's watchful stride, Blossom's ancient dance. Night fell. The moot ended with the ancient oath, sung not spoken. "We keep the roads, we tend the roots, we fly the skies, we listen and we witness, and, while the wild may bloom, we stand." In every tongue the watch had learned, the song echoed through the groves and along the rivers, taken up by children and dragons, by the saplings and the wind. Years blended, not in monotony but in rhythm, each echoing the last but altered, like branches grown from a common root, but reaching for different stars. Some seasons brought hardship. A great flood washed away 3 villages, but the dragons lifted children and elders to safety. An illness struck the young, but healers from distant lands brought new remedies, and the saplings stood as shields, their leaves steaming with protective song. In times of plenty, the watch spread further. Root ambassadors planted groves in new lands, sunlit coasts, wind-blown highlands, river deltas thick with marsh. Some groves took, others failed, but each year more children came north to learn, to serve, to return home carrying seeds and vows, stories and memories. Among the watch, new traditions grew. Every decade, The entire order gathered to craft a book of memory. Tales told in every language, recorded not only on parchment, but on living tablets of birchen bark, strung along the great hall so visitors could read, touch, and even sing the histories aloud. At these gatherings, the heart tree wept sap that the youngest used to write their own names into the record, each letter a promise that no one, child, dragon, or wanderer, would ever truly vanish from the watch's care. There were mysteries too. Sometimes, in the hour before dawn, a watcher on the high trails would spot a white wolf pacing the frost, or glimpse a girl in the shadow of a dragon's wing, both vanishing before a word could be spoken. Some said they were memories, others said guardians, but all agreed it was the world reminding the watch to remain humble, curious, and kind. And as each generation passed its oath to the next, the heart tree flourished. Its crown stretched wide as a castle, its leaves turned every color of storm and sunrise. Its roots, thick as the arms of giants, wound through the soil, joining with saplings old and new. The dragons built their nests at its base, and children climbed its boughs, whispering secrets, listening for the sigh of stories caught in the wind. In time, travelers came from every end of the earth, seeking wisdom, healing, or simply to see the place where road and root, wing and sky still met. They found no fortress, no crown, no war. They found the watch, still listening, still choosing, still growing, still teaching every child, every guest, that hope is a practice and peace, a long road. Always watched, never finished, and as long as the heart tree grew, and the moot was called, and the dragons soared over sapling groves, the world was never alone. For as long as the last watch endured, so too did the story, unbroken. Root and wing, fire and forest, the road always open, the memory of John and Arya and Blossom carried forward, living, singing, ever new, ever the same. Ah, hey, ah. So the season circled, and the gift endured, its rivers silver and full, its woods an ocean of green light, its groves a mosaic of roots both new and ancient, carrying the memory of every hand that shaped them. The watch was not merely a title or an order, but a way of living, woven into every crossing, every stone hearth, every road where old oaths and new laughter met. Through centuries uncounted, the last watch remained the world's living threshold, the place where beginnings returned and endings bloomed. It became the custom for each generation's moot to begin and end with silence, a hush so profound that the wind itself seemed to listen, the dragons settling their wings and even the river pausing in its course. In that space, every watcher, from the oldest counselor to the youngest sapling tender, let memory settle before words shaped the future. The silence was not empty. It held the weight of everything the watch had ever been, every hope, every fall, every name, and every song. And each moot was different, shaped by those who gathered. One year, the hall beneath the great heart tree overflowed with the scents of spices and salt, as ambassadors from the summer isles and farlang brought gifts of fruit and fragrant oils, asking for seedlings to take home to their distant harbors. Another year, a fleet of glass-winged skimmers arrived at Lantern House, their captains seeking counsel and permission to settle on a distant archipelago, made habitable by the Order's teachings. Through all the changes, the old traditions grew alongside the new. The green singers taught the leaf song to every child, who then taught it to their children. The dragons, each with names and memories no scroll could hold, nested at the edge of the sapling wood, their offspring mingling with those of Ashenwing, Star-Eater, Tiderake, and the other founders until the very air was heavy with the beating of wings. When the watch faced sorrow, and there was always sorrow, for peace was no bulwark against loss, they met it as a family would. A fever might come, and the healers would gather, singing the sapling songs that slowed the illness and warmed the sick. A year of drought, and every hand turned to the river, shaping new channels, sharing what they had until the rain returned. When a child died, the whole council mourned, planting a tree at the edge of the heart grove and naming it aloud in the moon's sight. There were seasons of plenty too. When a great shoal of silverfish filled the rivers, it became a festival. Nets cast, songs sung, every belly full. Some years the dragons shed more scales than usual, and the crafters fashioned new medallions, tokens of service or love, or simply the joy of being present at such a time. On festival nights, when the saplings caught the light of the auroras, the groves would shine in every color, the sky reflected in every leaf, and the watch would dance and feast as if the world could never end. But change was constant, and the watch welcomed it. The sapling groves spread, not as an empire or a kingdom, but as a living net of hope and witness. When the west was struck by the dreaming sleep, a malady that stole memories as gently as a lover's hand, the watch sent dragon riders and green singers to sit with the afflicted, telling stories until the memory root took hold and the lost returned. When the east was racked by a season of red storms, it was the watch's ships, carved from living willow, crewed by those who knew both water and wind, that brought aid. Sometimes the watch's role was to stand between. When two cities in the south readied for war over a border, rangers and dragons arrived by sky and river, not to threaten but to sing the peace songs and offer feasts until pride gave way to kinship. When a lord in the far north declared himself king and banned all saplings but pine, the watch sent not soldiers but a single child, bearing a flowering branch and the old simple greeting, "Let us grow together." In time, even that lord's keep was ringed by roots and laughter. The watch's greatest treasure was its story, not the past alone, but the living, shifting memory of all that had been risked, lost, built, and dreamed. The archives beneath the heart tree grew larger every century. Scrolls and tablets, tapestries and songs, dragon scales etched with names, sapling bark painted with maps of journeys and victories. There were records of every moot, every planting, every oath and forgiveness, and above all, of those who left and returned or were lost and found again. The greatest lesson taught to every watcher was that forgetting was the only true enemy. So long as the story was kept, all other wounds could heal. For the world beyond, the gift became not merely a place but a legend. A place where dragons and children could walk together, where roads never truly ended, where strangers were always offered bread and a listening ear. Foreign kings and queens sometimes envied the watch, but most came to see its endurance as a promise, a sign that even the fiercest change could lead to peace. Some tried to copy its customs, others, more wise, simply sent their children to be trained in the ways of the root and the wing. Every watch captain was different. Some ruled long and steady, like John or Bronwyn. Others for a season or a single moot. Some were elders who had known 100 festivals, others chosen at 16 for the clarity of their dreams. All bore the same burden lightly, holding the memory of Blossom's final lesson. That to lead was to listen and to serve, never to grasp. Each decade, the moot of all moots was called, when even the most distant groves sent delegates, and dragons circled for days above the clearing. New vows were written in sap, new roots planted, new wings unfurled. Old wrongs were forgiven, and old tales remembered. At these gatherings, the children painted the faces of John and Arya and Blossom on their cheeks, not as worship but as play, a game of memory and gratitude, each child telling the story in their own way, so that the legend itself grew deeper, richer, more true for all its variations. And always, in the hour before dawn, the watch captain would stand alone beneath the heart tree, feeling the pulse of sap and memory, hearing in the hush the voices of all who had ever kept the vigil. Sometimes it was only the wind, sometimes the gentle shifting of roots, and sometimes, only sometimes, a wolf's low whine, or the brush of a girl's laughter in the leaves. So the last watch endured. There were always new storms, new losses, new beginnings, but the cycle itself became the surest hope. When the dragons rose at sunrise, their shadows laced the roads and rivers. When the saplings trembled in the evening wind, their roots held strong. The world, in all its wildness and pain and beauty, was not tamed, but tended. Change was not feared, but welcomed. Stories were not hoarded but given freely. seed by seed, to every hand that would plant them. And if, one day, all the roads should end, and the watch become only a memory in the mind of the world, it would be enough. For as long as even a single sapling grew, a single child learned the root song, or a single dragon beat its wings above a hearth tree, the story would begin again. Roots and wings, road and sky, fire and memory. The last watch, unbroken, keeping the world open, watched and cherished. Forever.